Freedom, man. That's what it's all about. You've got to groove on freedom, like the good book says.
Welcome. You are listening to What on Earth is Happening. This show will discuss the topics of human consciousness, mind control, natural law, the occult, and all issues that affect the freedom of the people of Earth. What on Earth is Happening will endeavor to shine light upon the darkness of our world and to offer empowering solutions to the problems we face as humanity approaches its critical moment of choice. And now, here is your host, Mark Passio.
Welcome one and all. You're watching What on Earth is Happening. I'm your host, Mark Passio. My website, whatonearthishappening.com. Ladies and gentlemen, government is slavery. And right here on What on Earth is Happening, we are ending slavery one mind at a time. Welcome to the show. Today is Sunday, April 7th, 2019. This is episode number 205 of What on Earth is Happening. We have a great show planned for you here today. I'm going to be getting into another controversial topic that is sure to simultaneously enlighten and offend. The very entitled socialist attitudes of millennials and Europeans I'm going to be talking about today. The show is called Gimme, Gimme, Gimme. And as harsh as that may sound, folks, what I'm going to try to do today in the first part is to try to really tread a balance between being harsh enough to explain to people that the behaviors that they are exhibiting are very socially unacceptable because of what they are demanding from other people that they don't have the right to demand. But I also want to, tread a balance where I'm trying to not be so harsh that I don't inspire people to want to do better. That's my goal here for today. So, I'm not trying to just drive away part of my listening audience. I'm trying to make them aware of what habits have become culturally ingrained into their very way of existence. And I'm going to include some other groups of people in there as well. But, another thing before I get into the main material for today, I'm going to do is I'm going to do an addendum to last week's show toward the end of the show today. I'm going to show people something that I neglected. A couple of people brought to my attention when I was talking about how to get occulted information, how to find and download occulted information on the internet in the age of internet censorship. I neglected it was a big oversight on my part. I really should have shown people right up front how to download videos from the internet. This is something that most people don't know how to do. They don't know how to grab a YouTube video, to reshare it or to just save it offline to prevent it from being censored. Okay. And this is something I'm going to show people on today's show after I get into the main topic of gimme, 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 the socialist and entitled attitudes of millennials and Europeans. Another thing that, people have been bringing to my attention, they say that the shows that I've been doing have been very divisive, okay? I don't see it that way, okay? I'm not lending more to the divide. I'm trying to heal the divide by showing people where the wrong behavior is at so that they can make corrections. This is what real spirituality is ultimately all about. It's about looking at the dark side. It's about looking at the shadow side and doing that shadow work of looking at the aspects of one's personality and one's makeup that you do not like in yourself. It's looking in the mirror. It's stopping pointing the finger outward and turning it around this way and saying, what work do I have to do spiritually upon myself? Even in the absolute muck of the soul, in the dark night of the soul, in the horrible aspects of the individual personality that people don't want to look at and often want to run in the other direction from. This is part of what this is all about. It's about exposing that. It's about confronting that and looking at it head on, not beating around the bush and dancing around these types of topics, but addressing them and looking at them, right on point, so that they can be dealt with and they can be worked with and, purified. These are aspects of the personality that we have to work on to actually purify and become better. So that's what this is all about, looking at all of these things that are seemingly divisive. But it's really about how we can do better. That's ultimately what it's really about. And as I said, we don't need to compete with anybody but ourselves from yesterday. That's who we should be competing with. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into the topic for today. It's going to be like a dual show, and it'll take as long as it takes. Again, I may not finish the material today. It may take that long, or I may finish early and take calls early. So if we finish early, whatever time we have left, we'll take calls till the end of the show. In any event, this is the graphic that Brett made for today's show. Always doing a great job with the title cards. It's the title for the show today is "Gimme, Gimme, Gimme: The Entitled Socialist Attitudes of Millennials and Europeans." We're going to talk about what all this means. What is entitlement? What is socialism? Who are the millennials? Why do they why do they behave this way? What has been culturally inculcated into them? And why do Europeans take up this socialist attitude? We're going to talk about that as well. And it's part of what inspired this show, I want to say right up front, is dealing with people regarding the ARC drive. Now, for those who may know, the ARC drive, or may not know, the ARC drive is a 1 terabyte hard drive with all of the research data that I have put together over the years that have helped to influence my work. And this is all the data that I downloaded from the internet earlier that helped to awaken me and enlighten me as to what is going on in the world. I put the best of that research data on a 1 terabyte hard drive, and I offer it to people, not charging anything for the data. That's free. You just provide the hard drive, and I do ask for a personal donation for my time for assembling it and, basically doing the copy of the data and then taking the data to the local carrier, taking the boxes to the local carrier office to ship them back. And I feel that's an equitable trade for, all the research data that I've put together over the years. Now, in dealing with people to take me up on this offer, I am making an offer for information that I have put together and done the work to assemble as an aggregator. Obviously, it's not work that is created by me, okay? But I've assembled it. I've gone out and found the pertinent, relevant data, and then assembled it. And then in making the offer, I have certain caveats and prerequisites that I want people to strictly abide by, because I'm the one making the offer and the other person is the one taking me up on the offer. And in taking someone up on an offer, if the offer is actually done out of kindness and respect for another person, which this offer of the ARC drive is, I don't have to do this. There's nothing compelling me to do this other than my recognition that it's my moral responsibility to help teach and enlighten other people. Okay. But there's nothing that is other than that is binding me to have to do this for other people. I want to do it because I know it's the right thing to do to help enlighten them. So I am the one making the offer out of my generosity and kindness. And then I find other people making demands on me that I must do it according to their likenesses and their preferences, their likes and whims and preferences. Okay. And I see this largely amongst younger people taking me up on the offer, and amongst Europeans and Canadians, I have to say, taking me up on the offer. I'm going to include, our neighbors to the north here in North America in this segment. I didn't put that in the title, but they are almost as guilty as our European brothers and sisters, okay? And again, people can get as offended as they want about what I'm going to say here today about the people I'm talking about in this show, but it doesn't make it any less true, okay? And part of it is that people don't deal with a lot of people from many different parts of the world. Very few people are constantly on an everyday basis dealing with people from just about every country on this planet, as am I, okay? People write to me from all over. People send ARCs to me from just about every country. Okay, so I deal with a wide variety of personality types. So I have a good frame of reference, a database of personalities, if you will, to extrapolate what I'm talking about today. That is a generality. It's a generally true thing. And of course, not everyone is like what I'm going to talk about today. Okay, this is not a blanket statement. That's another thing that should be understood. I'm talking about the majority of the people in the millennial generation and the people from Europe and Canada that attempt to take me up on the ARC Drive offer. Now, in saying that, I do have to say, since explaining my reasoning for doing the ARC offer the way that I do, it's gotten somewhat better. Okay, so, there's an improvement here when people get more information, when they understand what you're going through. The ARC Drive video is one of the best things that I've ever done. The episode on the ARC, I believe it was episode 199. Okay, since that has happened, hardly anybody has messed up any of the instructions on the ARC, and all of the ARCs have arrived, all of the hard drives have arrived in perfect shape. Not one of them has been damaged, and I don't believe any have been damaged going back. Everybody has gotten their data, okay? Which is what I want to see. That's the whole purpose of being strict with the instructions, because I've seen it a million times, done a million ways wrongly, and then people have had their hard drives damaged, right? And we don't want that, because that costs you time, that costs you money, then you don't get the data. And then you have to do it all over again if you really want the data, okay? So that's where this show was inspired from. I just wanted to say that as the beginning, okay? So let's jump into the material for today. This is all about the great work. It's about doing the great work, okay? And, what I'm trying to explain to people today is if we're going to do the great work, we have to be ready for some of the consequences, okay? How hard it is to do this, okay? And this is what a lot of people don't see or understand, okay? Because they're not doing it. See, they're watching, okay? So the great work is about dragging people kicking and screaming into freedom. That's really what it is. As sad as that is to say, as sad as that sounds to say out loud, most people don't want the state of freedom, okay? They want to remain cosmic, eternal children with no personal responsibility. One of the things that you can say to somebody to make them hate you more than anything else is you are 100% totally responsible for what goes on in your own life. That will make people murderously enraged toward you. Murderously enraged, okay? Okay, because that's the truth. And people hate that truth more than they hate anything else. They hate personal responsibility being put squarely down upon their own shoulders, and they want to shirk it. They want anything but that, okay? So when I tell people the state of the world is our doing, it's not being done to us. We are the ones who are doing this to ourselves. We are the ones who have put ourselves in the state of slavery, okay? The great work is to get ourselves out of the state of slavery, okay? And that is often to have to hammer on people's minds, okay? See, the whole idea, the whole adage that George Orwell said, okay, Eric Blair, author of 1984, he said, if freedom means anything at all, it means telling people what they don't want to hear. That's what real freedom of speech is. Things that make people uncomfortable because it confronts them with themselves and the ugly shadow side of themselves that they don't want to see. That's what occult psychology is all about, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? It's about owning even the dark elements of the self that you don't want to acknowledge as being part of who you are. Okay? And being responsible for that. So the real work is to try to explain to people what the true philosophy of freedom is all about and the true philosophy of personal responsibility and natural law. So the true great work is the arduous task of influencing others to awaken to the truth. It is to help others to realize that in supporting and condoning the legitimacy of, quote, authority and government, or man's law, that they have actually been supporting and condoning the legitimacy of slavery, and that they were therefore immoral for having done so. And this is the thing no one wants to confront and realize. This is why we can tell this to our best friends and family members, and they want nothing to do with it, or us in many cases, after we come out as being anarchists, true anarchists, and people who abide by natural law and think the truth and know the truth that man's law is nothing but coercion, violence, and slavery. Okay, so we often, take the attitude, or take the analogy, I should say, of being this individual here on this slide on the right-hand side of the slide. He's in the room with all the other people who are asleep, and he has his head in his hands because he can't believe, he can't wake them up, and that, that they don't want to know, that they don't want to see. But you know what, folks? Some of the people, who are sleeping are people who think that they're awake. And I'm talking to a large part of my viewing audience right now. A lot of the people who think that they're that guy with his head in his hands trying to wake other people up are actually the people who are asleep because they're not really doing anything. Okay? They think they're doing a whole lot, but they're not really getting the word out in any kind of a wide way. Okay? Talking to a few friends and family members, or trying to wake up your spouse, or trying to, talk to a old auntie who, is in a nursing home or something, is not doing the great work in any kind of a wide way. And I've been very harsh and critical to people because let me tell you something, folks. In all honesty, naively of me, I'm going to use the word naive, which is the word I hate the most applied to me, but naively, I'll say it to myself, I was naive in thinking that there would be something of the order of about 100,000 teachers that were teaching natural law to my level by this point in time. Minimum. Maybe more, I thought. And here's the problem. It hasn't manifested. It hasn't manifested because people aren't really awake and aren't really listening. They put on the air that they're awake and listening, but you know what they're doing? They're sitting doing what I was doing when I was still asleep. They're amassing more and more information, and they're watching it play out, and they're not getting involved in the spiritual battlefield in some capacity. So people who think they're that individual who's trying to wake other people up are actually the people who are sleeping in that room, in that image right there, in that analogy. So moving on to the next slide. The next part of this slide. In short, to do the true great work means to help people to abandon their false religions, their false religious beliefs. And again, we talked about religion on last week's show. It is not just the cultural religions that we identify as religious beliefs like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, etc. Those are not the only religions we are talking about. We are talking about false axiomatic beliefs that lead people away from higher consciousness and hold them back from an understanding of natural law. All false belief systems do this, whether it be the belief in authority, whether it be the belief in government, whether it be even the complete belief in the necessity of the monetary system for life on earth. Whether it be a belief in that only truth can come from science, or that only health can come from pharmaceuticals or doctors. These are all religious belief systems. These are all religions. False religions. These are the erroneous and dogmatic beliefs which hold back the progress of consciousness, specifically by impeding the reception of truth and natural law. This is what it is to do the great work. To do the great work is to chip away at false belief systems all day long. And why don't most people want to do it? That's the hardest work in the world that there is to do. The hardest work in the world there is to do is to tell people something that they fervently believe in and have believed in their entire life is a total crock of bullshit. and is doing nothing but harming not only themselves, but just about everybody else in humanity. And it's destroying human freedom. That's why it's so difficult to do. Most people don't want to hear that. They want to kill the messenger. They're not interested in just saying, oh yeah, I was wrong and I have to change. Now I have to change not only my thoughts, but my behaviors too. Hardly anybody wants to do that. I didn't want to do that when I was learning what the world was, coming out of a satanic mindset. I was so depressed about how wrong I was. I sat and sulked listening to doom metal in my bedroom all day for the better part of 2 years. Okay? That's how hard it was for me to tell myself I was wrong and how wrong I was. But I still did it. Because that's the whole caveat here is if we're being honest with ourselves, right? You could tell yourself all kinds of lies to say, oh, no, I'm okay. I don't need to do any of that. I'm good, and you just can lie to yourself all day long, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But if we're being honest with ourselves, okay, we have to make an honest assessment. Am I really doing the work upon myself? And am I really influencing others to do that same work upon themselves and to abandon their false belief systems? And I would say most people are asleep in the room, and they're those people on the right-hand side who are completely unconscious, especially if they know and aren't doing anything. I'm talking to them more than I am the asleep or the dead, okay? I'm talking to the potential teachers out there who haven't said a word, okay? You're in a much more deep trance and coma than the people you think are asleep. Trust me, okay? And this is the problem. The problem is that there's really still only one and only Mark Passio, and that's a problem. That's a big problem, okay? I want 100,000 people doing the work of teaching natural law to my level or beyond, minimum, maybe more. And I'll tell you what, if I can name 5 off the top of my head that are doing a great job, we're doing well. All right? So what we have to understand is that there's really 3 basic mentalities of what we can be doing in the world, how we can be basically approaching life on earth in general. We could be engaging in service to self, service to others, or a third form of service, which I'll talk about in a later slide. But let's look at the dynamic of the 2 mentalities or the 2 worldviews of service to self versus service to others. This is a big part of what inspired this episode and what I see in the dynamics of dealing with people with the ARC drive. When you're making an offer of service to others and all you hear back from them is service to self, gimme, 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 me, you're not doing enough, you're not catering enough to my preferences. Okay? When I'm dealing with hundreds of people and they're dealing with nobody but me. Okay? And my instructions for packaging and shipping the offer in a way that can be accommodated to my schedule, my busy schedule. Okay? A person who is doing a whole lot and has been doing an incredible amount of work. Okay? And I always want to say thank you to the people who assist me, people on the staff, in the production crew, and the setup crew, people who have donated. You guys make my work easier, okay? And in many cases, I couldn't do it without those people, all right? But the whole point is, in most cases, if not the vast majority, like almost all of them, the people who are receiving this knowledge aren't really doing anything themselves. Some of them are. I'm not saying none of them are. No blanket statement there. Okay. Some of them are doing their own work, but most of them are still in the learning phase. And they're really not even really at the very beginning of the learning phase. They're very green when it comes to this. Many of the people who have requested the ARC from me. Okay. And this is a whole new thing. They're trying to open up whole new vistas of understanding and unlock, previously locked doors in the mind. Okay, which I commend them on doing. They're to be commended just for wanting that knowledge. Okay? However, when you deal with many of them, you see they're still in this service to self mentality, almost like a form of mini-me Satanism, as I call it. The Satanists have done a brilliant job. The social engineer Satanists have done a brilliant job, folks, in bringing people into a lower form of their own mentality. I call it mini-me Satanism. It's not the big boy Satanism, of the world control class. They have to give their acolytes, they have to give their lower level initiates, the people that they really want to rule over, a watered down variant of their ideology. And the watered down variant of their ideology is only care about yourself, get whatever you can and get as much of it as you can. And whatever you have to do it to get what you want. Okay. And take as much as you can. If you're given a quarter of an inch, take 6,500 miles. Okay. So, and this is what I see. There's no attitude of gratitude or gratefulness in many cases. And now, look, I want to make it very clear, folks. Some people are so grateful to receive the information. Okay. And they know what they've just been given. Then there are other people who they want to constantly, it's not even bargaining. They just want it on their terms. That's it. Because they don't understand how to operate with anybody any other way. They don't know manners in a sense. Okay? And what I'm really talking about here is social manners, something that's largely lost on society. People don't know how to engage socially with manners. Okay? With basic mutual respect. Okay? If someone makes an offer to you, you don't start barking terms to them. They're making an offer out of their own gratitude. They're not charging you for it. They're not saying you have to do favors for me to get this. Okay? They're just saying, I'm dealing with a lot of people and I'm dealing with a lot of other work that I do simultaneously. Okay? You're not the only one that is of import, right? And if I'm making an offer that involves my time, my technological horsepower that I have to give up, time on computers to do copies on drives, resources on computers, okay? Not only my time to unpack boxes, hook up the drives, copy the data, repack the boxes, take them to the shipping office. I do this, folks. I do this. I don't have teams doing this for me. Some people occasionally help me copy a couple ARC drives, but largely I do almost all of it myself, okay? In addition to all the other work that I do during the course of the week here on What on Earth is Happening. It's literally a full-time job, okay? So what I see is that many people, not all, don't have an attitude going in of be grateful, I'm willing to do this, okay? And look, I see this again. I'm going to tell you the people I see it in, and I don't see it. I'm very, very happy to say I don't see it, that attitude of, give me more, do this for me. I don't care about what's involved in your schedule. I don't see it with a lot of Americans. I'm happy to report that. Okay. You would think it'd be the other way around. You really would. You'd think with the European contingency, they're very cultured people in many cases, and they wouldn't have this level of disrespectful attitude. And again, I'm not saying it's all of them. Okay. And it's gotten better. I want to let people know, since I brought this to people's attention, it's gotten better. That's why we have to talk about stuff like this and bring it to people's attention. Because if you don't, they think what they've been doing has been acceptable and will continue to be acceptable. And then it doesn't improve. See, this is part of why the world's in the shit state that it's in. Okay. That's why we're in the state of slavery. People won't call other people on their bad behavior, and things just keep snowballing and getting worse because of that dynamic, because they don't want to rock the boat and they don't want to cause discomfort. Okay? So going back to this dynamic of service to self versus service to others, this is an image that I found online that I think just perfectly depicts the service to self mentality. I'm going to get all I can. I'm going to consume all I can. Screw the other guy. His problem isn't my problem. I don't care what suffering he goes through. I'm going to take. Me. Gimme. That's service to self. And you know what? If we're being honest with ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, if we're being honest with ourselves, the most important word in that statement is not honest. It's not ourselves. It's if. If we're being honest with ourselves, most people are in this state. Okay? Most people in the world are in this state of consciousness. And you want to know what? That's why the world's enslaved. That's the very reason. That's the very causal factor that the world is enslaved. Because this is the attitude of human beings. It's a satanic mindset from the religion called Satanism, which is the main first tenet is self-preservation above everything else, including morality. That's the very first tenet of the satanic ideology and the satanic religion. And so they gave to all the people of the world, they inculcated them into a lower level variant of their very own mindset. Mini-me Satanism. That's what the world is in. Okay? So if we want to transform that and change it, and by changing ourselves, thus change the reality that we live in, thus change the manifested world, okay, we have to change the causal factor, which is the level of consciousness that we are operating at. So service to others mentality puts us in a position where we understand, see, what service to self mentality does, I'm just going to step back briefly. What service to self mentality does, okay, is it asks the question, what can I do for me? That's the question it asks. Each one of these mentalities or forms of consciousness has a question that it asks. This one says, what can I do for me? I wake up at the beginning of the day and I immediately start thinking, what can I do for me? As the day goes on, the question continues, what can I do for me? When I go to bed, I'm thinking about what can I do for me tomorrow? And that's it. And you wake up and wash, rinse, and repeat the cycle. And do it over and over again in an endless loop. That's Satanism. That's what Satanism is. See, this is the whole problem, ladies and gentlemen. I have almost never, in all of my studies, in all of my watching and listening and learning, I have almost never heard anybody explain to other people that that's what Satanism is. And that's the problem. Is that nobody knows that that's what Satanism is. And the problem is that hardly anybody is telling and teaching other people that that's what Satanism is. But that's what it is. It's spending the entire day asking the question, what can I do for me? Okay? Never asking the question, how can I help someone else? Okay? Because that's service to others mentality. How can this mentality, this worldview, this way of being in the world, way of living, ask the question, what can I do to help someone else? Okay? How can I alleviate some suffering for another individual or group of people? Okay? How can I bring someone up to my level? That's why I like the image that I found for this dynamic. Okay? It's people trying to help people up a rocky, incline. All right, which is what the world is like, and those who have made it up to the top, they're trying to help others get up there and encouraging them that they can do it. All right, this is service to others mentality. It's not necessarily doing the work for them, okay, but it's being an assistant. See, in the work of alchemy, in the work of occult alchemy, you can never be the alchemist for someone else. Okay? You can help to influence them to become the alchemist for themselves, to do their own personal inner transformative work. Okay? But no one can do alchemical or shamanic work for someone else. We can be way showers, we can show them methods, and we can show them the path that they have to walk down, but they have to walk down it themselves. There is no substitute for personal experience in the great work. Okay? So, that service to others mentality. It's taking a step outside of yourself. And, it's not to say that you lose self-interest, okay? But the self-interest becomes enlightened self-interest because you're saying, in helping others, I'm also helping myself by bettering the world. I still have that dynamic of ego, as we all should. No one should become so 100% altruistic that they lose sense of self. Because then your health will start suffering. And I get into this dynamic where I get so over the top sometimes that it's like it will start affecting my health and nervous system. And you don't want that. There has to be this balanced tread, right? Where you're doing enough to maintain yourself and keep yourself healthy and in good shape and energetic enough to keep going and keep doing it. But you also have to be helping others, strong enough to help others on the way. That means you got to be strong enough for yourself and strong enough for others. And let me tell you something, folks, it gets draining. It becomes very draining at times, even for someone like myself who's been doing this long, because then you start getting burnout, especially when you see other people aren't making the effort, nowhere near in any kind of a capacity that is required. And, they're still doing something like hinging on my every word when they should be becoming teachers themselves. You should only need me as a teacher up to the point where you start to become a teacher yourself. This is what we need. Not everybody in the world is going to learn from Mark Passio. Trust me, most people will never hear a word I say. This is why I have to explain to other people, the idea is not to just send people to me. The idea is to become a teacher yourself. I'm not trying to have followers for Mark Passio. I'm trying to help people to understand natural law and encourage them to teach it. That's what I want to see. All right? I'm not going for, my goal here is not popularity, notoriety, YouTube views, money, anything like that. Okay? Look, if people do learn from me, great. It's an added, benefit. If I can support myself doing this, wonderful. That's an added benefit. But that's not my motivation. My motivation is to put the truth out into the world and help to inspire other people to teach it. All right? So that's the whole mentality of service to others. And in doing service to others, you'll benefit as well. Okay? Because the world will improve and you will reap the benefit of that improvement. Now, there's a third mentality. Okay? And this is the mentality that I want people who I'm talking about to really get. Not just the service to others mentality and getting out of the service to self all day mentality. Okay? But to go further than service to self mentality, which is great. It's wonderful. It's needed. But this asks the question to yourself, what can I do to help someone else? What can I do to help others, right? That's the question. Well, the next mentality is service to truth mentality, okay? This is the one that's left out by almost all other spiritual teachers because this goes beyond human beings. This goes right outside of the physical domain. This goes into the pure spiritual domain. Service to truth. Well, you could call this service to the Creator, if you will. All right? Service to natural law, whatever you want to call it. All right? But you are serving a higher power in nature than just human beings, whether it be you or anyone else. Okay? And the question that is asked by the person who goes into the mentality, the way of being in the world of service to truth is, what is the best way that I can possibly help the world? See, it's not just saying, well, there's an immediate situation here. How can I alleviate this immediate suffering? But if it's the idea of, if you want to feed, the old adage, if you want to feed a person, you give them a meal. If you want to feed them for a lifetime, though, you teach them how to procure food for themselves. Okay? And, that's the whole problem, is that people aren't being taught self-reliance, self-discipline, self-responsibility. Okay? So this is the dynamic of, you don't just try to give people an ideology or a mentality. You try to show them how to learn, how to exercise discernment, how not to fall into traps, of being wrongly influenced and controlled. Okay? And then how to go out into the world and ask the question, what is the best way I can teach the maximum number of people? So that they will start to disengage wrong ways of thinking and thus disengage wrong ways of being. See, this is the question I had to ask myself when I realized I knew a lot about the dynamics of the world back when I was younger, especially because of the experiences I had gone through. Okay? I had to ask myself, what am I going to do with this knowledge and experience? Right? Am I just going to tell my friends and family and hope some of them listen? Maybe spread it down to the next generation? Will that really be long-term effective? Will I reach the maximum amount of people and do the maximum amount of good that way? Do I write a book that maybe I'll get in a couple of bookstores if they take it, if I get decent enough distribution, and then maybe enough people will buy and read, even though print media is like, kind of almost like a dinosaur compared to how people absorb media today, okay, and learn. So, I had to sit and consider the question, how am I going to approach this dynamic? And the answer to me was I had to ask the question, what is the absolute best way that I can help the world? And the answer came back, I need to put this work out publicly online. And I was going to do it unapologetically, and I was going to do it in my own aesthetic and my own delivery style, not trying to be someone else, okay? Delivering it with the personality that someone might see talking to me on a daily basis. Some people can handle it and some can't. Some are never going to be able to handle it. They're going to die in their state of weakened, I'm offended by everything mentality. Many of the people, okay, who can't handle 1 second of a Mark Passio video. That's not who I'm doing this for, though. See, I decided a long time ago my target audience was the strong people who would be able to hear what I was saying because they had come partially so far. And I would try to influence them to become the next generation teachers of the world, to put this work out there in many different ways so that other people can get it. I can only do it. I'm only going to do it this way. I could do it a million different ways if I, put on a bunch of masks and pretended to be somebody else. This is who I am. Okay? As a matter of fact, I hold back a whole lot on the air. Ask people who know me in person. I hold back on the air. Okay? So, that works with some people. It's not going to work for everybody. Okay? So the idea is service to truth mentality says, how can I, in my own special way, in my own way, right, put the work out there so that other people can get it? And what way can I do that I'm going to make the maximum impact in the world and do the most good as a result? And if you're really in a higher level consciousness mindset, this is the question you're asking. What is the best way to help? Not just one way to help, but what is the best way you can help? And that's your will. That's your true will. If you follow that path, that is the way that if you keep doing it, the universe will open doors to you. I know. I've done it. Okay? And I've seen those doors open to me. Just the fact that I'm doing this show is proof of that it came together, it manifested. It took a couple of years, but it manifested. Okay? And all the dynamics, the resources, and the people came together to make that happen. Because I was in this mentality. That's the reason that it happened. I had to push for it. I had to fight for it. But as long as I stayed in that mentality of service to truth and focusing on what is the best way to help, that's why that manifested. And see, this is what I'm trying to explain to people. The people I'm talking about, they imagine themselves to be awake. Many of the people that I'm going to be talking about in this presentation, but they're not really in this state of mind. Okay? They haven't really gotten that and don't really understand this is a spiritual war where you have to ask that question. What is the best way to help? Okay? Most people don't ever get there. If they're doing well, they get to the mentality of, well, how can I help somebody else? Maybe I'll try to enlighten my mother or my sister or my brother. Okay? But they never really go to that service to truth mentality. And that's where we all have to get to. So moving to the next slide. I'm talking about people who have entitlement attitudes. Attitudes of entitlement. What does that mean? Okay? We hear the word entitlement, but let's actually define it. Okay? Entitlement is a belief that someone is deserving of or entitled to certain privileges. Certain privileges with which they did not necessarily themselves earn or should have the right to. It is also, entitlement is also a set of social expectations which are considered unreasonable or unduly prescriptive upon others. In other words, making demands upon other people's resources, making demands upon other people's time, wanting you to give them leeway in instructions that you've set because they work for your time and schedule and resources, right? Make exception for them, because they are considered special. They're considered entitled, right? And there's a million reasons why they'll want it. Well, I don't have as much money as the next person, or I don't have, the same resources, or, I live in this country or that country or that country, And it's like, okay, I get all of those things. I understand. But at the same time, then you don't need to accept an offer that is made. It's like someone who wants to go out to a restaurant with a bunch of friends and doesn't have any money to pay for his meal. Well, the person might want to go to the place to enjoy the social interaction and the good food with his friends, his or her friends. But if the person doesn't have the money to pay for that meal, they probably should not go to the restaurant empty-handed and then expect someone else at the table to pay for them. This is what this is like, okay? It's like saying, well, I didn't work for what I'm getting, right? But I want to change all the dynamics and all the rules involved and get it on my terms anyway, okay? And that is, again, the words here, it's a perfect definition. Unreasonable or unduly prescriptive. It means that you have made unreasonable demands upon the other's resources, time, efforts, etc. Okay? They're unreasonable, unduly prescriptive. And this image perfectly describes it. This image is what I see spiritually playing out inside the mindset, the mentality, the psyche of the people with this type of an attitude. And I want to tell you, like, it's in the anarchist movement. It's in the so-called freedom movement. See, because many of the people are still of this notion that this is all just an external conspiracy. Okay? The conspiratorial aspects of this are worth studying. They're worth noting and studying, and they're real. Okay? But see, if you get just lost in all of that and you don't go back to the beginning of my work, okay, which is why I started with the solution. What was the solution in the beginning of What on Earth is Happening? The presentation and the podcast, right? Was it know every aspect of the conspiracy? No, that wasn't the solution, was it? Right? Was the solution blame one group, that you think is the be all and end all of who's controlling the world, and point the finger at them and say that's the problem and that they just have to be eliminated and everything will be fine? Was that the solution presented at the beginning of What on Earth is Happening? No, that wasn't the solution either. Was the solution come up with ridiculous models for the shape of the earth? All right, we're not going to go there, okay? But that wasn't the solution either, folks, okay? The idea was change your consciousness. Understand what higher consciousness is and means, and then do your internal work to change your consciousness and thereby change your behavior. And then start influencing other people to change their mindset and behavior. And here's the problem, folks. You want to know the reason why there aren't 100,000 teachers teaching at my level? Because they haven't gone through the personal transformation in consciousness yet. They're still studying only the external factors about the world control system, and they have not learned all of the dynamics of human consciousness. That is the required causal level factor for creating the change in the manifested reality, to change one's own consciousness. And this is why the world isn't changing, because we're not doing that internal work, and most of us look like this baby with their arms crossed, making demands on other people. And see, this isn't, again, people will turn the table and say, you're doing that. No, I'm explaining how other people are falling short in doing the great work. I'm not making the demand. I'm saying you and other people out there are saying you want this change to take effect. Okay? Therefore, there are prerequisites. There are requirements in work that must be done for that change to take effect. You're in slavery, you want freedom? Well, there's prerequisites that have to take effect. That means you have to change certain things in your mindset and behavior. I want those things to change, so I change those things in my mindset and behavior. That's why I'm acting like a responsible adult when I deal with someone else. Not like an angry child with their arms crossed. Okay? Making unreasonable demands. I've come out and said, I won't continue to do work unless people step up and do contribute resources and time and effort. And I don't see it as the same thing because of what I've already freely given. Okay? Having freely given of my time, my energy, my resources, my personal experiences, okay, from my own caring, from my own desire to want to enlighten other people, which is what the true great work is about, okay? I don't think that that's the same as going up to another person who has said, okay, I can do this for you, and then me saying, well, I want you to do this on my terms, okay? I can say, no, that's okay. If you can't be here every Tuesday when I work, then I don't accept your offer of help. Just like somebody can say, well, I don't have money to ship an art drive to you, so I can't take you up on your offer. Maybe when I have the money, I'll take you up on it, But there are people who want you to jump through their hoops to do everything, to do it for them. And this is, I'm going to explain, it comes out of a socialist mindset. The attitude of entitlement actually comes out of a mindset of government taking care of everybody. And it comes out of this staying a child. Again, this is the perfect image. Go back to the image, okay? You see the child not getting their way, right? This is wanting immediate gratification, not wanting to work for something, right? It's a lot different. Wanting immediate gratification, not wanting to work for something. People will compare this to me saying, I want some help for doing the great work with What on Earth is Happening. How dare I? How dare he ask for volunteer help? Oh, because I've been doing this for like 12 years, so I don't deserve, freely, I might add, and out of my own pocket. Only recently have people come forward to really contribute resources financially for me to make things go to the next level with this. And you could still say that they're at somewhat of a semi-pro level. This isn't anything like some of the production values of really bigger podcasts, but it's not bad for doing it on the budget that I have available to do it on. Okay? But my point is, entitlement is something different than asking for justified help and resources that, after someone puts a whole lot of work in, you could say, hey, they deserve that. This is undue mindset of deserving something when the person hasn't earned it. That's what makes it entitlement. Okay? Something can be deserved but not given. Okay? But this means it's not deserved and demanded for. That's what entitlement is. All right? So you can't get the two things confused with each other. All right? Because there are legitimate things that people should receive, especially if they put a certain amount of work into something to benevolently enlighten. And guess what? It's not just me. There are many other people that deserve resources that people should go out and fund, because that's what they do. They give of their full time to do this, to research, and then to present in whatever form they present in. And those people should be making more money and have more resources at their disposal than imbecile basketball players and imbecile baseball players and imbecile football players who don't give a damn about anybody themselves and lead totally hedonistic, selfish, satanic lifestyles, okay? To play children's games, they get those kind of resources. Because that's what the whole society values. This is how screwed up our value system is. Okay? The people who are trying to teach people what real values and real principles are have to scrape by the skin of their teeth. And people who play an idiotic children's game so that people who don't want to think about reality can crowd into crowded stadiums and watch grown men play children's games, they're making millions, while the people who are actually trying to enlighten humanity are scraping by, not having the resources that they have to even help, their pay their staff or even live themselves. It's ridiculous. And then we'll get flack from imbeciles saying, how dare we ask for donations? I mean, like, shove it up your ass, okay? People who think like that. So I'm talking about almost invariably people who have done absolutely nothing and yet think they're entitled to a whole lot, okay? For having done nothing just because they want something on their own terms, just because they're used to getting what they want on their own terms, because daddy government, mommy government has given me everything since the day that I was born for free. And that's how the whole world should be. Nobody should work for anything. Government should just provide everything for us. So I'm going to sit here with my arms crossed because you just asked for me to follow instructions. Why should there be any rules on anything? Why shouldn't I just, get what I want at any point in time just because I feel like it? Because that's what's always been given to me by mommy and daddy government. This is this child mentality that's coming out of a lot of people. All right? And it's embarrassing. And I'm trying to tread a line here, folks. Again, I said this at the beginning, between being harsh, but not too harsh that I make people totally tune out and say, I don't even want to improve myself. It should make people feel uncomfortable to the point of that they're somewhat embarrassed for previous bad behavior and want to say, you know what? We have behaved like that. It is due to cultural inculcation in our way of life, hammered into us by the media and the government. And we can do better and we can change this mentality. All right. So let's move on. The people that I'm talking about that are doing this are millennials and Europeans. In other words, we're going to talk about what the millennial age group is. It's basically people who were born around the early 1980s, into the early 1990s, mid 1990s maybe. Okay. So, and of course, Europeans are people from just about any country in Europe. And, but they're taking an entitled attitude, which we just looked at what that means, and they're taking a socialist attitude. And again, I feel that the attitude of entitlement actually is derived out of and stems from the socialist mentality. So what is the dictionary definition of socialism? According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, which whether you consider that a valid source or not, it's a basic dictionary definition. This is someone else's slide, by the way. Government ownership and socialism means government ownership and administration of the means of production and distribution of goods. Okay? Now, some people will twist and contort that definition as simply public ownership, okay? Which there is no such thing. Larkin Rose just did a great video on how public ownership is utter nonsense. There is no such thing. If there isn't private ownership, there isn't ownership. Because ownership means you decide exclusively what happens to an item, a piece of property, how it gets to be used, period. Okay? So if that isn't exclusive, it's not owned by anyone. Okay? It's in the case of socialism, it's a tool for the state to control. That's all it is. Okay? And it isn't just collectivized ownership or, quote, public ownership. It actually is in the hands of the state. So people want to nitpick and fight over that definition. That's what socialism is, ladies and gentlemen. It means the state owns the means of production and distribution of goods, period. That's what it means. That's the classical definition of socialism. And guess what? It's the correct definition of socialism. All right? Now, right off the bat, if you can't see how that's going to end in a nightmare situation, then you haven't read world history. And you haven't understood how this descends into totalitarianism, fascism, Nazism, communism, etc., and ends up with starvation and or mass deaths by military or secret police, or starving people out. Because that's how it happens in every recorded instance in human history, and that's how it will continue to happen as long as total retarded people who are completely slow on the uptake, which is what the word retarded means. You don't need to have any kind of a syndrome to be retarded in your thought process. It just means you're slow on the uptake. That's all it means. To retard means to slow down. Look it up in a dictionary. Go look it up in Merriam-Webster. Okay? It means to slow the progress of. And it means that people are slow on the uptake in their ability to understand what things mean and in the direction things are going. So yes, the people who haven't understood that that's where socialism goes are retarded in their thought process. Okay? Socialism is also defined as a system of society or group living in which there is no such thing as private property. And I would agree. This is what these idiots believe. This is what people who think that no one can own anything. See, all rights are property rights. We talked about this when we talked about natural law. If you don't understand that, go back and listen to the natural law seminar. Go back and listen to the podcasts on natural law. Without property, there are no rights. All rights are property rights. Everything that is a violation of any human right is a violation of someone's rightful property. Property is real. It exists in nature. In nature. It is not a constructural idea. Money is a constructural idea that doesn't exist in nature. It's an agreed upon thing. Rights aren't constructural. They exist in nature. Property is not constructural. It exists in nature. Okay? You are actively using it in the 3D world. It's property. Okay? Going back to the definition of socialism, a system or condition of society in which the means of production are owned and controlled by the state. Perfect definition. Correct definition. Okay? The means of production owned and controlled by the state. Again, what socialists naively believe is we're going to give all this power to the state. We're going to then solve all the problems of the world because in their beneficent knowledge, their omnipotent beneficence, the state is going to take care and provide for everyone, thus ending all problems of the world by their effective distribution of the means, distribution of the means of production and the distribution of goods and services, solving all world hunger, all world problems, and then in that state of ultimate power of controlling everything, how everything is made, produced, and distributed, the state will magically dissolve itself out of its own beneficence, thereby producing an anarchic world. Yeah, that's how it'll work. Yeah. Where's our vomit guy? We got to have him on file, okay? We got to have our vomit guy on file, okay, so we can play him at any time so I could go back to, hold on. Yeah, let me see if I could find him real quick. Just to back off of my slides, I'll go to through my stuff and let me just see if I could find that guy. Give me a second. Okay. All right, hold on a minute. Yes, switch back to my laptop real quick. I can't do it. Wait, give me a second. I'll do it full screen. Go back. Give me 1 second here. I'll do this full screen for everybody. Yeah, we're going to improvise here on What on Earth is Happening. That's how important this is. Okay, I should have planned for this, but I didn't. So I'm going to make a slide real quick. And I'm going to play it. And I'm going to go full screen. Hold on. Give me 1 more second. There we go. Go full screen now. There we go. Here we go, folks. Yes, the state is going to control all means of production and distribution of all goods and resources and services. And then the state, after arriving at this ultimate source of power, is going to dissolve itself. Oh, it's not even our benevolent leader, folks. This is the average person who believes in socialism. Okay? This is the believer in socialism spouting this nonsense. The state's going to control everything, folks. It's going to control all the method of production, the means of distribution. And then it will dissolve itself, leaving an anarchist society. Oh, what pure beneficence. Oh, it's so wonderful. This is how imbecilic people sound. This is how really imbecilic they sound, folks. You know? Again, I think people should really record themselves, right? They should record themselves and then play themselves back so that they can hear how ridiculous and nonsensical they actually sound when they speak, or what their ideas are. Speak your ideas aloud, then play them back to yourself so you could hear how ridiculous some of the ideas that people speak actually sound. That this is what socialists believe. That's what they actually believe will happen. This is what Marx, the Antichrist, if there ever was an actual Antichrist in the world, what Karl Marx pumped into the mindset. And it wasn't Marx, it was the social engineer occultists who controlled him and his family members and his associates like Engels, and basically commissioned him to put the planks of the Communist Manifesto out there. You know, Marx was a puppet. Okay, he wasn't even somebody with this type of mentality. You know, it was like LaVey, in the same sense that LaVey concretized the satanic mentality and put it out in the Satanic Bible. It came forward years after that he was charged to do that by higher level Satanists, namely the Bush family, okay, who were friends and handlers of LaVey. All right, so what we ostensibly believe are put out there by certain writers / philosophers, ideologues, are not really their own work. Okay, they're commissioned to do that so that the real source of these ideologies and mentalities can remain secreted away. Okay, so anyway, we have to understand what we're talking about when we're talking about a socialist attitude of entitlement. This is where it comes from, because it comes from the belief that, oh, the state should provide everything for everyone. And therefore, hey, you know, how dare you, go against that mentality by saying, you want me to do something and it costs me money and resources and time and effort and energy? Even if I'm taking you up on your offer, Oh, I have to make demands on you, even though you offered the thing, to do it my way. And as free and little resources I have to put into it, I'll just go back to this, folks. I'll do it when I get to the Europeans, okay? Let's just move forward. Invariably, unwaveringly, socialism always descends into communism or a form of it. Okay, and it can descend into nationalistic fascism as well. It is possible. Okay, or it can descend into a variant, a twisted inbred variant of the two, where you have certain aspects of the society acting fascistic or corporatist, and then other aspects acting completely communist / socialist. But in general, the social engineers of the world have decided that communism through socialism, arriving at communism through socialism, is the most effective means, because it is largely done culturally and over a long swath of time, compared to a nationalistic fascism form of totalitarianism, which is often done as quickly as possible, often through military coups and conquering other nations militaristically through military invasion. This is seen as not preferable to the long march through the cultural institutions that a socialist / communist regime would choose, because it is done almost imperceptibly. And then people wake up in a totalitarian society not even understanding how they got there, often accomplished over multiple generations. But people like Stalin said, I only need one generation to, have the future generations for hundreds of years. And, the generation that has been gotten in our culture is Generation Y, otherwise known as the millennials. Okay? And when I mean gotten, I mean they are hardcore got. Okay? To put it in street lingo, they are got. Okay? And they don't even know how gotten they are. All right? See, that's the problem, is you have an entire generation of individuals, an entire demographic of people that are so overly intellectualized and overly, quote, educated formally, that they largely don't have the common sense to understand how completely duped they've been. Okay, that's why so many younger people in this generation believe in socialism and communism. All right? And what communism is, people have to understand it, and they have to go and read and understand really what this ideology is, because people don't understand what it is. I'm not going to get into all the planks of the Communist Manifesto today. That's a whole nother presentation. I will be doing that I'm going to do a long form presentation. It's probably going to be about 8 or 9 hours, called the dark occult origins of Nazism and communism, because they have a shared dark occult origin. Okay? So I'm going to be getting into that in a formal, long-form presentation, probably not on What on Earth is Happening. More likely than not, that will probably be being done either probably near next year, probably toward the beginning of next year in Philadelphia. I'll set up a location and I will deliver probably an all-day seminar here in Philadelphia, just myself, called The Dark Occult Origins of Nazism and Communism, probably in the year 2020 if we're all still here, okay? So what people have to understand about communism is a system of international socialism. See, the words national socialism is in the definition of communism here, but the prefix inter is applied at the beginning. So National Socialism is what Nazism was. The word Nazi is a truncation of Nationalsozialistische Deutsche Arbeiterpartei. And excuse my German pronunciation, I probably butchered that. But if you take the acronym of it, it's NSDAP. National Socialist German Deutsche Workers Arbeiter Party. Okay, National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, was the initials for the Nazi Party. And then the truncation of it became Nazi in English because they didn't want to say the whole thing in German. Okay? And in that is National Socialist. It was a socialist regime, but again, it was National Socialist. Again, that's what fascism is. It's National Socialism. Okay? It means that you've accomplished socialism through a more individualistic, nationalistic approach. You've gotten it there, appealing to people's egos and nationalistic pride. And then you've largely conquered militarily instead of culturally. Through military might. Those are the mechanisms of National Socialism, folks. Just read about it historically, which most people won't pick up basic history books and read about it. Okay? What we're talking about here in the form of communism, as practiced by, Red China and Soviet Russia, we're talking about international socialism. That's the only difference between communism and Nazism. One does it through nationalism, one does it through internationalism. Okay? So this is international socialism. It means instead of putting people on a nationalistic path, you are putting them on a common world path, the common goal, common purpose to a world system. Okay? And that's why this is favored by the people who talk about they want a new world order. The new world order is international socialism. And that's communism. All right, that's why they want us to go to the gap in between going straight to communism. You got to get to full socialism. They want democratic socialism. They wanted to degrade from a republic, okay, down to a, quote, democracy, down to democratic socialism, then into pure socialism, then eventually into international socialism, which is communism. Okay? So, moving forward, to understand the dynamics of why people do not understand what communism is and do not understand why people in high-level positions of finance and banking and military and government, okay, want to bring about world communism through socialism and always want to project that socialism is a good thing for the masses of people. And they want people subscribing to the idea of socialism. It's the same thing as why do Satanists want people subscribing to the ideas of communism, of Satanism, but on a lower level, mini-me Satanism? Well, if you're a high-level communist and you want to bring the world into totalitarian communism, the New World Order, the dark New World Order, you have to bring people into a mini-me version of your mindset, which is socialism. That's mini-me communism. It's the same thing as what I call mini-me Satanism. And let me tell you something, folks. This book right here that I'm putting on the screen, put this full screen. Okay. This is probably the most important book any human being will ever read, in addition to The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke and The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose. Okay? I have now asked multiple rooms of people at events that I've been at who has read this book cover to cover in its entirety. It's a short book. It's like 150 pages to 200 pages, depending on how big the print is in whatever edition you're getting it in. Okay? Maybe even less than that. And hardly anybody's hands ever go up. In my personal life, I ask people, how many people do I know have read this book cover to cover? I might know 3 or 4 people personally as individuals that have read this book cover to cover. I'm telling my whole listening audience, my whole viewing audience right now, this is the most essential book right now that anybody could read at this point in human history. This is it. None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen. I will link to a PDF copy of the book in this podcast. Download it, put it on your damn reading device, whatever it happens to be, whether it's a smartphone, a tablet, whatever the hell you want to read on, okay? And read this book cover to cover. Anybody who wants to claim that they're awake and has not read this book, you're asleep. I don't care what else you know. You don't know what's going on in the world if you haven't read this book. Somebody at a high position of government writing about it from the inside, from his own knowledge from the inside. Just like I'm telling you about Satanism because I was on the inside and came out of it, this person's telling you about what's going on inside high-level positions of government because he was on the inside. It's not prophecy, folks. It's a game plan. Okay? All right? People want to say it's conspiracy. No, it's called a game plan of internal collusion between high-ranking members of politics, banking, military, industry, etc. that is operating in the very real world that you don't have to apply the moniker of conspiracy to understand that it's happening. And he called it None Dare Call Conspiracy because it most certainly is an organized conspiracy. And he was trying to explain to people why do these people want to bring it in through socialism? Because this is what people don't understand. They think they're trying to help you by bringing socialism in. Nothing could be further from the truth. These people aren't interested in helping you. They're interested in controlling you, in enslaving you. For anybody in the truth movement that has not read None Dare Call Conspiracy by Gary Allen, you are asleep and you don't know what's going on if you haven't read this book. I don't know how much more harshly I can say it. Those who haven't read the book None Dare Call Conspiracy are not awakened to the political machinations of what are really going on in the world. And if you can't take the time to read 100-some page book cover to cover, you're not worth anything, let alone putting the time into awaken or helping to awaken other people. So read the book. No problem. My producer was just informing me, sorry folks, was just informing we had a little network streaming hiccup there. I apologize for that. Hopefully everything is working fine again, but these things happen. We are live, so we'll just continue to go. Going back to this slide, I'll link it in the in the podcast when I put it out. Also, just as a brief aside, people ask, the live stream goes on YouTube when it's live. It goes on Facebook when it's live, on Vimeo. We simulcast on Vimeo, Facebook, and YouTube, in addition to whatonearthishappening.com/show. Okay. But the podcast officially gets put up from the raw video. Okay. And it's largely uncompressed video. So I want it to look as pristine as possible. And I usually put that up the night after the show. I'll take a break for a couple of hours after I do it, because this show leaves me pretty drained. And then I'll take a break. I'll eat something. I'll relax for a little bit. Then I'll go put the video up. Okay. So, don't expect the podcast immediately. This isn't an automated process, folks. One day I'm going to leave that till the next show. Okay. One day I'm going to leave doing the podcast till the next show, and I'm going to show everybody what I have to do to put the podcast up. So you understand the work that I do after the show, which nobody does for me. I do it. Okay. So, cut me some slack on the time it takes me to recuperate after I do a 3-hour live broadcast, to the time when I got to go back and sit at the computer immediately again and start working on the podcast. Okay. There's no magical podcast button. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I see it. It's right above the return button. There's the podcast button. I thought that was the backslash, but apparently that's the podcast button. You hit that, your podcast goes live, right out, boom. It's all tagged, everything. It's up there in the format you want. The XML feed is built, boom, podcast up. No work required. It's one button on the keyboard. Sorry, folks, I missed it. I didn't know there was a podcast button on my keyboard. See, that's why you got to pay attention. And when you buy new technology, you got to look at the instruction manual. You got to look at all the buttons. If I would have known that, I'd be hitting that button, boom. 1 second after the show is done playing, it would be live. So, understand it's a complicated process, okay? And it takes a little while, all right? I'll do it live on the air one day. Thomas Jefferson said, and he was really talking about socialism here, I predict future happiness for Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them. That's what socialism is, ladies and gentlemen. It's taking all of the labor of the people into the hands and usability of the state as tools. And then you're telling them, we're doing this so we can take care of you and provide for everybody as nanny and mommy and daddy. But really what they're doing is enslaving you. All the while patting you on the head and patting you on the back and saying, we're going to take good care of you. That's all it is. And Thomas Jefferson understood that, as did all the founding fathers. Okay? But people don't want to listen to that true conventional wisdom. No, they want to say they know better than, our ancestors did in what to look for as far as government control goes. Yeah, because we're doing a real good job at being vigilant for it now. We're halfway into communism. We're almost all the way in. Because this is what the millennial hears, and most of the Europeans. Free stuff because we love you. The crown, the state, the government. They just want to give you all this stuff. They don't want to give it to you to keep you dependent and keep you acting like a little child just taking and sucking on the tit. No, they want to give it to you because they love you. Keep calm, right? Keep calm. There's my take on keep calm. Okay? There's my take on the crown asking us to keep calm. Okay? That's my answer. Okay? To you psychopathic, inbred pieces of pure filth. Pedophilic filth. Okay? But this is the attitude of most of the children of the world. And by children, I mean the adults of our society. The eternal children. And this is the podcast title. This is the title of the show. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Right? Because we're in service to self mentality. And I'm entitled and I deserve that. How about stop allowing yourself to be robbed and spend your money how you want to spend it by not paying taxes? Stop allowing these psychopaths to take from you. Find methods of doing runarounds around their system by whatever means necessary to do it. And don't contribute into their taxation system of slavery. And then put your money where you want to put it. Voluntarily. But this is everybody's attitude. Gimme, 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 because I'm entitled. I deserve to get it for free, even though somebody else labored to create it, to produce it, to distribute it. It's because there's no respect for property, no respect for property rights. See, in their whole attitude, there should be no such thing as property. Well, if you dump property, you dump rights with it. Because if you understand natural law, all rights are property rights. There can't be rights without property. And think about it, it's the word proper means right. It's moral, it's proper, it's right. We use the words to mean the same thing. That's not accidental. Those words were chosen to mean the same thing for very specific reasons. So, why do the millennials have this mentality? Okay? They have this mentality of instant gratification. First of all, who are the millennials that I'm talking about? Who are the millennial generations? Who is the millennial generation? So the millennial generation could be defined as Generation Y, in between X and Z. I'm a Generation Xer. I come from Generation X, born between the years 1965 and 1980. I was born in 1974, right in the middle of Gen X. Okay? And Gen Xers are more like focused on sort of a vocation. They're not like drifters from one project or career to another, or, they're generally like identify with like doing a vocation of some type, a task that they are very good at. Gen Y is more, float from job to job or work from company to company, mostly because there isn't a lot of job security anymore. But it's like, they don't really have that like sort of vocational idea about what they want to do in life. So they're more drifters. They're also highly focused on service to self mentality. Not all of them. Again, these are generalities, not blanket statements in this case. Again, some blanket statements are true and sometimes I'll make them. In this case, I'm making generalities, generalized statements that are largely true, but not always. Okay? Generation Y is born between the years 1981 and 1996. Some people will place that slightly higher. I've heard, 84 to 97 to 98. It's in that region, okay? Early 80s to mid 90s to even late 90s, okay? And they're highly focused on it's like these are the people I was talking about last week that think the personal computer is over with. We don't need high-end desktops or laptops. We could just use tablets and smartphones, okay? They're always in their phone. They're always in social media, obsessed with social media. This generation is obsessed with social media. Status on social media is like their life's goal, okay? And thinking that I can do everything on my cell phone. I can do everything on my tablet. Well, actually, no, you can't. And that was a deliberate effort on the part of the social engineers to get you off of a truly creative platform like a powerful personal desktop computer, okay, or a powerful laptop computer. All right, that's who we're talking about here. Okay, so this has been also called the me generation, and there we have it again: mini-me Satanism, me, gimme, instant gratification. My generation has some of that, but not to the extent that the next generation does. Now, Generation Z, I'm hearing good things about, that are seeing all the bullshit of Gen Y, of the millennials, and going, good God, how did we let it get this bad? And they're stepping up and doing something about it already, as young as they are. They're realizing how totally fucked their parents are. How fucked up in the head that they are. And realizing how fucked they're making the world. And they're basically saying, no, we got to do something about this. Some of them, not all of them, but, a portion of them are waking up just by the nature of how mentally screwed up their parents' generation is. Okay? And guess what? I'll blame it right on my generation. My generation made Gen Y. Gen X produced Gen Y. Okay? We produced the millennials. My generation produced the millennial generations because largely my generation was so screwed up from the baby boomer generation that created us that we passed the nonsense right down to the children that my generation produced and created the millennials. It seems like the cycle is being interrupted a little bit. I'm not going to use the word completely broken, but it's not progressing in a cyclical pattern as it did over the last 3 generations. Something's going on with Gen Z that isn't the way that the social engineers are really planning for it. Now, that being said, let's see how it plays out. I'm not prophesying anything there, okay? I'm saying that I think they have a little bit better of a chance, the Gen Z younger generation does, than the millennials, because the millennials have, when I mean the mind control worked perfectly upon them. When I mean it worked perfectly, I mean it went flawlessly. The machine had not one kink in it during the formational years of Gen Y at all. The social engineers, I have to give them a round of applause. I mean, you guys, brilliant work, okay? They're no joke. These people are not a joke. The social engineers who programmed Generation Y with their belief systems did a flawless job, I have to say, okay? A flawless job. Because I have never seen in my life a more brainwashed generation. Ever. Okay? And thank God your children aren't listening to your bullshit. Thank God. Okay? That's all I have to say. You know? Thank God your children are infinitely smarter than the dunces that you are. Most of them. I'm not talking to every single person in that generation, because there are some that are legitimately awake. Okay? But I'm talking to the vast majority as a whole, as a group. Okay? You're not going to get done to your children the mind fuck job that the previous generation unfortunately allowed to happen to you. It's not going to happen with your children. Okay? There's too much information, too much data, and they're just a little bit more streetwise than you are. Okay? And they're not buying the lies that you bought from the mainstream media. Because let me tell you something, folks. This generation, they'll portray them in the media as, oh, they're always on their cell phone. They are addicted to mainstream media. Addicted. Okay? And you want to say, oh, they don't watch as much television. They watch just as much television, and they watch TV in other forms. Just because they're not watching TV on a television doesn't mean that they're not paying attention to the mainstream media on other devices. Okay? Just because they absorb the same bullshit on a different device doesn't mean they're not taking the same bullshit into their minds. Okay? So this is who Generation Y is, the millennial generation. Okay? And this is who I'm talking about, that has this attitude of, I need it on my terms. I'm not interested in your daily work or what you have to go through, or your routine, your schedule, your hardships. It's me. Is this going to be better for me? Well, then do it, even if it's harder for you. Okay? That's their whole mentality. Their mentality is, I care about only me. It's a satanic mindset. Okay? Satanism was very much propagandized to this generation of individuals. And they bought into it hardcore. What else was very much propagandized to these individuals was socialism. Okay? Socialism was the long march through the cultural institutions, the Gramsci plan coming out of the Frankfurt School of Germany. Okay, was brought into the mindset of the millennial generation in a hardcore form, more so than any other generation on earth. And that was done through the university systems of North America, specifically the United States, and of all the European countries. The university system is where the communists and socialists decided to spread their tentacles through. Okay? And that's where they decided that they were going to actually concretize and conduct the long march through the institutions, the plan of Antonio Gramsci, the Italian communist. Okay? Read about him, read about the Frankfurt School, which was, said that conquering a nation militaristically with communism and then bringing it to the rest of the world is not the way to do it. That you would have to extend your tentacles to the far corners of the earth and then conquer the world culturally. Conquer each nation culturally, weaken its people, weaken the sexes, divide people along all kinds of boundaries, which we talked about on former shows about division, and then conquer them through cultural means. And that was called the Long March through the cultural institutions. And it has worked flawlessly. And it has worked most flawlessly on Generation Y, the millennial generation. They bought into that whole plan of divide and rule, divide and conquer, bringing in socialism and eventually communism through cultural mechanisms. Okay? That is the mindset that largely their parents pushed them into, that came out of the socialist schools of thought of the 1960s and 70s, okay, that invaded this country through Soviet Russia and other places in Europe. This is why we see millennials propagating socialism so much in the modern world and saying, we don't want a capitalistic society, not that we have one. They don't even understand that what they think capitalism is actually cronyism, or what is known as crony capitalism, which is a collusion between government and corporate power. It's not real capitalism, okay? And they want now to bring in what they call, and many politicians in the world today, like Sanders and Cortez, are calling democratic socialism. So here are basically communist flag wavers that are waving, flags akin to the hammer and sickle, although, they're not putting the hammer and sickle on it, or the Chinese star, just straight red flags, and calling it democratic socialism. And, look at the age group, folks. The age group is exactly the people that I'm talking about. We're talking about people in their mid 20s to early 30s who are getting, politically, quote, active in the political circles and attempting to change the United States into a communist country, which would then, of course, eventually fall into outright totalitarianism through communism, as it always does throughout human history, whenever attempted. And they'll just give you these lines like, oh, it hasn't been done right. Yeah, Stalin just didn't starve enough people, Mao just didn't have enough people murdered, that's all. So, they think that we're going to get out of the crony capitalism by going into the opposite polarity, which is called socialism. And they want to do it through a blending between what they consider democracy and socialism. And all this is, folks, is like, well, we're going to use the mechanisms of government to have voting. And we're going to basically, even if people are wrong and, 51% of people vote to cannibalize the other 49, well, then it was passed through law and it was democratic. And so, dive in with your forks and knives and chop up your fellow beings, because it was put to a vote and it was democratically done, That's what the real mechanisms of government are all about. That's all they've ever been about. They've never been about anything else except violence through coercive control. That's it. And you do that through voting. And if the vast majority wants to commit whatever heinous acts of violence they want to commit, well, hey, you voted on it, Forget individual rights. This is about the majority rules, It's about collectivism and majority rules. Well, guess what? Most of the time, the majority is wrong. Most of the time, the majority is immoral. You have to go down to the individual principles, individual rights, if you're going to get to truth, if you're going to get to real principles, if you're going to get to real values. Okay? And if you're ever going to get to real freedom, you certainly need to get down to individual principles and rights. But yeah, here's the Democratic Socialists of America. And I want you to take a look at all the faces. I want you to take a look at the age group. It's a very nice, neatly packed age range, isn't it? There's no very, very young people, and there's certainly no people with any gray hairs in the head. There's certainly no much older people, from like our grandparents' generation. None of them are in there. Okay? This is all, people in their late 20s to maybe mid 30s max. And that's the millennials right now. That's it. Okay? And they think they know what's going on. They think they have it figured out. They think they know the woes of the world. No, they know what the mainstream media and their socialist professors told them. That's what they know, because they've been put through the gauntlet, through the ringer of outcome-based education, which is Soviet-style education based upon former Nazi-style education, based upon former Prussian military-style education. And if you don't understand that, again, you haven't been paying attention. You're not awake. You don't know where the modern education system comes from or the former systems of education that it was influenced by. Okay? So what I'm trying to explain to people is real methods of education to get people out of this type of a mindset. And the real method of education is the classical liberal arts education methodology known as the trivium and quadrivium, which we talk about here a lot on What on Earth is Happening. These people, none of them, the classical liberal arts education methodologies were all pulled from the schools of these people long before their birth. Okay? They are not involved in true critical thinking methodologies. They're not involved in real scientific methodology. Really never have been in the schools that they went to. And that's why they came out, outcome-based education. They came out of that gauntlet that they were put through, thinking exactly what the engineers who built that system of indoctrination want them to think. That's how social engineering works, folks. And people are just too overly educated to acknowledge that they were duped and put through that ringer. They don't want to admit that to themselves. Largely also because they're still drowning in like probably hundreds of thousands of dollars of school debt. So-called education debt. Okay? So, this lifestyle leads to them basically not even making enough and being in debt so much that they can't even eke out a modest living, and then they want to blame capitalism for that. Look, I'm not your huge proponent of capitalism and monetary systems and everything like that. I'm a proponent of higher consciousness and true spirituality. And a lot of the selfish assholes that you find on the other side of the spectrum when it comes to being radical capitalists, they don't understand a thing about real spirituality. There are people in the anarchist movement that say they're anarcho-capitalists, and they say the word spirituality has no meaning to them. Consciousness is a meaningless term. Well, left-brain asshole is a meaningful term to me, which is what those kind of people are, And, these people are just as imbecilic, because they think that the state should take care and provide for everybody. Like a benevolent parent, that's going to take care of them from cradle to grave and provide for their every need. So in a recent poll conducted in America, they just basically asked a bunch of people from many different states and many different walks of life and age groups, provide the definition of socialism. And of course, the socialism is the means of production and distributions of goods are in the hands of the state, basically. That's if people basically just answered that or even said, publicly, collectively, whatever, the means of production and distribution of goods is in the hands of the state, is in the hands of the public or the state, they would have been gauged the correct answer. Okay. And in doing that, only 16% of millennials actually gave the correct answer of what socialism was, when I'm going to read you an article now coming up that talks about over 58% of millennials want there to be socialism or don't want capitalism. And yet only 16% when polled, could provide a correct answer of what socialism even is. Americans in general only did twice as well. Americans above 30 years old Only 30% of them correctly gave the answer, less than a third, approximately one third. It's disgraceful that people can't give a simple definition of what socialism is, you know? And yet, over half of them are going to be advocating for it. I'm going to pause the presentation right here, and I want to go to an article. Okay? So I'm going to switch over to my web browser. You can cut back to the browser. And we'll go back to the presentation, but I want to read this article now. Okay, it's from the Washington Times, not the most reputable source, but I'll tell you what, I believe the article that they're writing right now, that they're publishing right now. Okay, so they did a poll where they polled millennials and asked them, would you rather live in a socialist or communist nation than under capitalism? And guess what, folks? In this article, they actually also said, if fascism was a choice, would you accept that over capitalism? Okay, so it says this troubling turn highlights widespread historical illiteracy in American society. Now, for the Washington Times saying that, folks, okay, this is how radically off base this poll got. That even the Washington Times published that this is troubling and it indicates widespread historical illiteracy from a paper that I would say, isn't the most trustworthy source in the world. Okay. However, it at least tells the truth in this article, which I'm going to read. Okay. So here's some former, Soviet, leaders, including Lenin and Stalin, busts there shown. It says the majority of millennials would prefer to live in a socialist, communist, or fascist nation rather than a capitalistic one, according to a new poll. And I just want to read that first statement again. Listen to this, folks. If this doesn't trouble and worry you, you need your head screwed on straight, because it's not. Okay? The majority of millennials would prefer to live in a socialist, communist, or fascist nation rather than a capitalistic one, according to a new poll. In the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation's annual report on U.S. attitudes towards socialism, 58% of the up-and-coming generation opted for one of the three systems, either socialism, communism, or fascism, compared to 42% who said they were in favor of capitalism. The most popular socioeconomic order was socialism, with 44% support. Communism and fascism received 7% support each. So again, they are for the stepping stone to communism, which is socialism. Marion Smith, executive director of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, said the report shows millennials are increasingly turning away from capitalism and towards socialism and even communism as a viable alternative. This troubling turn highlights widespread historical illiteracy in American society regarding socialism and the systemic failure of our education system to teach students about the genocide, destruction, and misery caused by communism since the Bolshevik Revolution 100 years ago, Mr. Smith said in a statement. Millennials are more likely to prefer socialism and communism rather than the rest of the country. 59% of all correspondents chose capitalism as their preferred arrangement, compared to 34% who said socialism, 4% fascism, and 3% communism. Some of communism's luminaries are admired by millennials. 31% said they have a favorable view of Che Guevara. 32% had a favorable view of Karl Marx. 23% had a favorable view of Vladimir Lenin, and 19% had a favorable view of Mao Zedong. Okay? Think about that, folks. That's 1 in 5 thought that Chairman Mao was an admirable human being who indirectly, as a dictator, led to the deaths of an estimated 90 million people. Okay? That's an admirable soul. Joseph Stalin was viewed favorably by just 6%. In the poll, only 33% of millennials were able to identify the correct definition of socialism in this poll, where they largely favored it. Still only 33%. That nationwide poll I just showed you, only 16% could tell you what socialism was. Only 33% in the very poll in which 58% said that they would live in a system, either socialism, communism, or fascism. Out of them, only 33 were able to identify correctly the definition of socialism. They fared about as well as the rest of the country, which only successfully identified socialism at a 34% clip. Generation Z, the generation after the millennials, was the most informed group, with 43% correctly identifying socialism. You see, the younger generation isn't taking the bullshit. They're not taking the indoctrination as well as this Generation Y class of individuals. It just swallowed it down. Like I said, they funnel it down the gullet, okay, with a funnel and a fire hose, okay. Forget spooning it in. Can't get it in there fast enough. Throw a funnel down the throat, get the hose in there, and just turn the valve on as fast as it can pump it in. That's how fast we got to get that propaganda down the gullet, okay. So where millennials struggled compared to other generations was in the identification of capitalism. Just 51% correctly said capitalism is the economic system based on free markets and the rule of law with legal protections for private ownership. That was by far the lowest of any age cohort. Americans as a whole correctly identified capitalism 67% of the time. Millennials are also less likely to have a negative view of communism. Just 36% said they had a very unfavorable impression of communism, and only 44% said they would be insulted if they were described as a communist. Think about that. That means that 56% of the millennial generation said they would not even be offended if they were described by someone else as a communist. Could you imagine that? This is who many of the people who listen to my show, these are your children. Okay? That's all I have to say. All right? This is the job you did, raising children. All right? And then people want to say go pump out as many kids as you can. This is one of the reasons I haven't had children. Okay? Because this is the kind of job people do, raising them, or I should say not raising them. All right? As a whole, 56% of Americans view communism very unfavorably. That's tragically low. That should be 100%. Only 56% view it very unfavorably. And 63% would be insulted to be associated with the ideology. One possible explanation for the millennial infatuation with socialism is that 53% of the cohort reports feeling burdened by the economy. So because they feel economically burdened, they think we should trash any form of capitalism and have a socialist system by which the state controls everything and just metes it out to people as they deem fit for their needs. Yeah, it's worked so well. It's just look at it historically, Forms of socialism have been responsible for the deaths of over 250 million people in the 20th century alone. That's 250 million souls. It's worked so well. As a matter of fact, it's worked exactly as intended, folks. It's worked exactly as intended. Millennials were the only age group more likely to say America's economic system works against me rather than for me. Generation Z had the most positive impression of the economy, with 66% saying it works for me, although many of them have yet to enter the workforce. The Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation survey was conducted online from September 28th to October 5th. It polled 2,300 members of the general public age 16 and above. All right, so we can cut away from that for a moment. I'll switch back to my slide presentation. I think that was a very pertinent article to view and to explain to people that that is exactly what is going on in our culture. So to go back to the slides, this was that national poll. Only 16% of millennials in the whole country were able to identify correctly what socialism was by definition. So you could see why millennials have this attitude, okay, and why they're identifying with it. They're poorly schooled. They're poorly educated. And, I'm not talking about compulsory schooling. I'm talking about they're not educated at all. They're not truly educated. They're indoctrinated. And again, that's due to the Gramsci plan. Look it up, okay? Understand that stems out of Europe. And that's another reason that Europeans have a lot of the same mentality as well, okay? But look up the Gramsci plan of the long march through the institutions that came out of the Frankfurt School, inspired by Antonio Gramsci. Okay, that's Gramsci, Gramsci. The long march through the cultural institutions. Understand that was their plan. They did it through education, through cultural infiltration of the educational system in America and throughout all of Europe. Okay? And they put communist professors in these areas that were Soviet or outright Chi-Com in their mindset. Okay? And they put them into these positions of education, high-level positions, university, tenured at university, and they just absolutely let the floodgates loose, brainwashing the American and European public of young people. Okay, they knew that that's how they were going to hit the population, going to educated, cultured centers where people would, propagate the ideas out to the next generation down below them. And that's exactly what happened. So Europeans, why do they take this attitude? And therefore, why do they act entitled? Okay, because I'm going to explain some of the things that they've done and what they'll ask. Okay, see, before I even read this, let me talk about some of that dynamic. Okay, what people will ask me, when I have already said in instructions, this is a set way that I do it. This is all the time that I have. I don't have time to do it any other way. That's the main thing that I want people to understand, right? If you were me dealing with many, 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 many people on a daily basis, which you don't do, you're not. See, this is why they're in service to self mentality, and they don't look at it from anybody else's point of view. They never put themselves in somebody else's shoes. That's the whole part of the problem. They can never turn it around and look at it from a different perspective, from somebody else's point of view. They don't do that. They're only ever thinking, me, 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 me. What can I get out of this? Right? So I'm like, I can't do this any differently. Would you be willing to go and use this carrier over here? It's only, you got to go to the other side of the city. No, I drop packages off in one location because I do multiple packages a day. I don't have time for anything else. I can't make an exception for you. It has to work in a regimented way. I can't be specialized toward any individual in this case because I'm one person trying to do the best I can to get the word out there with the time that I have to do it. See, that's why there's a set way of doing it. I'm not telling you I don't respect individualism. That's ultimately what this is all about. Okay? But I can't tailor the experience just for each individual person, or I'd be running myself ragged more than I am. Okay? And the point is if someone has generously made you an offer that you want to take him up on, you don't want to do the work that I did to assemble all of that data, right? You could do it. Go find it yourself, right? You don't have to get it from me. No one has to get the arc from me. I'm not forcing it on anybody. I'm not telling you have to receive this data set from me. You don't have to. No one has to look into it, right? You want to. It's something you want, right? So then everybody's like, well, this costs too much. Can't I send it this way? No, I don't want it destroyed or lost. I want it insured a certain way. I want it carried and handled a certain way. I want it packed a certain way. Want to know why? I'm the one who's going to fulfill the offer for you. I'm providing the service. So the service is on my terms, not your terms, right? So it's like if a cable company doesn't have the channels you want, you don't subscribe to it. You go to somebody who does. Well, you're free to go and get the data from someone else. I never told anybody they couldn't copy it for someone else. I couldn't. Once it's in your possession, you can do whatever the hell you want with it. You could set it on fire for all I care. I think it would be highly disrespectful to all the work that's on there, but it's your property. That's what property means. You're allowed to do what you want with it. That's one of the reasons I'm stringent with the instructions for the ARC drive, because I don't want damage to happen to someone's property that isn't mine. I would treat my property the same way with that level of care and respect. Why wouldn't I do it for someone else's property? Okay? So the point I'm making here is that I see in my experience, and you could say, okay, this is subjective, right? But in my experiences with American citizens who have taken me up on this offer, they seem to really understand and respect personal property. They seem to get it. And that's because I think in America, we have more of a culture of don't mess with anybody else's stuff. They worked for it. Most of us do. Now, again, that's not a blanket statement because there's some people that have no respect for other people's possessions, things, property, etc. Or will steal, lie, cheat to get whatever they want and harm anybody else or their property. That's also a mentality here in America. Don't get me wrong. There are lowlives who act like that. Okay? However, the people who are into my information and take me up on the offer that I have given about the ARC drive, okay, seem to really respect my time and effort and don't get uppity in asking me to do it a different way. They see that my time is limited, that I am trying to put the resources that I can into doing what I can for people, and they seem to take it in a humble way and just say, if this is what I got to do, Mark, then that's fine. Then I'll follow your instructions. And they generally don't even ask. They don't ask for anything different. Now, multiple times I asked people nicely, I can't do this personally. I can't tailor it personally for you. I'm sorry, but I can't. I don't have the time, the energy, the resources. I have to just have it a set way and just knock these out, okay? Because I have so much other stuff I got to do during the week. Again, I'm sorry, but the slideshow fairies just don't come to me anymore and build all my slides for me during the week, right? The package packing fairies, they don't arrive and pack up all my stuff that I have to ship, right? Okay? The research gnomes don't hop into the house and do all my research for me and it's all waiting there. I do all that stuff, okay? So I wish we had all of these beings. We need the package pixies, the research gnomes, and the slide making, the presentation fairies. Okay, but I'm sorry, but these are mythical creatures that don't exist in real life. Okay. So what I've noticed with Europeans and Canadians are they don't like it when someone says, I have personal rules regarding this offer. They don't want that to exist. They think everything should be completely on their terms. And it's not something I'm saying because I somehow don't innately like Europeans or Canadians. I hang out with anybody, treat them on equal terms. I judge people by the content of their character. Nothing about where they're from, their culture, their skin color, anything, their sex, nothing like that. Okay? I treat people even-keeled based on how they behave. That's it. And all I want to see is, do they behave morally and do they behave respectfully toward other people? So, when I have interacted in many cases, and again, I want to say emphatically, not all, okay? There are many people from Europe and Canada that are highly respectful individuals, and they're like a cut above, okay? That's all I have to say. However, they are in the minority until I really had to get in their face about it. Now it's improved. Okay, so I'm largely talking about in the past, but I think this is a holdover from how inculcated into socialist attitudes they are in the European Union. Okay, so what I would see is, I don't want to do this on your terms. You can do this for me. Why can't you do this differently for me? Right? This is going to cost me more money doing it your way. If I do it my way, I won't have to pay as much money to the carrier. Well, who said any word about how much it would cost? I never told anybody a thing about what a package would cost to send through a private carrier, which is what the ARC requires. You can't send it through the post office. I've had so many ARCs lost or damaged through the post office, I don't use them as a carrier anymore. Okay? I send out things that are, less important items, like just t-shirts or, DVDs that can be easily replaced. Okay? Rather than someone's hard drive with a ton of data on it, which I want to have a little bit of reverence for, because this is not only their own property, it's not my property, okay, it's theirs, okay, and it has the data of what can potentially transform the world on it. So I want to show that a little bit of respect, right? Yet they'll continuously ask, I want to do it this way instead of your way, right? When I asked nicely, don't ask for special treatment. I'm not going to give you special treatment because I can only afford to and have the time to do it this way when I deal with so many people and so many packages on a daily basis, right? So the Americans seem to get that and say, I'll respect your wish, I'll respect your time, I'll respect your resources because I know you're one person trying to send out all this stuff. It's like a server. In the server model that we talked about last week, the one server, okay, and then all the clients receiving the data from that one server, okay? I'm like the server in the middle of that model, okay? Well, and the other people will say, how many people continue to say, put the ARC online? First of all, that's not the point of the ARC, okay? The whole point of the ARC is that you're researching offline so that you have to make no internet connection at all, no matter how fast or slow or non-existent of an internet connection you have. The data is already local. That's the point of the ARC. I don't want to distribute it online. First of all, the other thing is people who haven't dealt with this much data, try uploading a terabyte of data. See how you do. See how well you do on your internet connection. Then I want you to try to download a terabyte of data off of some web server or something. See how well you do. Okay? All right. Yeah, you could probably do that with a torrent file, right? But, it depends on also how much it's going to be seeded and people are going to keep seeding it. All right? So in any one of those instances, trust me, folks, I've put out more ARCs to people personally through my house than anybody has online. Trust me, it's in the thousands. Okay? You look at just about any torrent and see how many times it's seeded. You're lucky if it ever hits 1,000. Okay? More people have the ARC due to me copying it on a personal computer right here in my house than have it from anybody that's ever attempted to distribute any amount of that information online. So I'm not interested in putting it online. Stop asking me. Okay? I hope that clarifies why I don't want it online. The ARC is to research offline so that you don't need an internet connection to have access to all this data. Okay? So I want to read this. It's maybe a little bit small. Maybe we go full screen. That's better. Okay? This woman says, this is a meme, I believe, taken from some social media or a website. She says, I'm a school teacher in Denmark making about $61,000 a year. We get free education. You don't have to pay for the doctor or the hospital. And students even get paid to learn. It all sounds so great, right? However, I forgot to mention that nothing is ever free. The minimum income tax in Denmark is 40%. Okay, and I believe this was back in like 2007 or 8 or 9, something like that. It was a while back. Okay, this was not now. Okay, I don't know if the date is in here, but I'll keep reading. Also, we pay a sales tax of 25%. That's on top of their income tax. Sales tax is 25% there. And on top of that, the government applies duties and fees. A gallon of gasoline is about $10. $10 for a gallon of gas. Tax on a car is 180%. This is called a VAT in Europe, a value-added tax. So anything that they deem non-essential, they put a VAT on, like a car. Meaning that a car that sells for about $20,000 in the United States, like a Honda Accord, raises the price to an astounding $40,000 in Denmark for the same car. Denmark is the highest taxed nation in the world, not just Europe, but in the world. Taxed an average of 80% on every dollar earned. Danes have the highest personal debt in the world. Few will ever own a car or a house. Anyone who makes over $80,000 annually pays a personal tax of 68%. This means that people with higher earnings have either found ways to evade the tax or have left the country, taking their companies with them. What's the motivation? When you're giving that much money back to the government, what's the motivation to succeed or improve? Nothing. You know? They won't let people do anything that they want with their own money. That's how heavily taxed it is. This is what communism is, folks. See, here's the new tagline that has to be brought out on every show is, that's what communism is. This isn't just socialism. That's what communism is. Okay? And it's worse. It gets even worse than that. Denmark's suicide rate for the past 5 decades has averaged 20.8 per 100,000 people, with a highest rate of 32. The American suicide rate has averaged 11.1 during the last 5 decades and has never exceeded 12.7. More than 11% of adult Danes, supposedly the happiest people in the world, are on antidepressants. And I'd say it's higher than that. That's a very low estimate. Everyone wants the American dream. In Denmark's neo-communism economy, no one will ever own or accomplish anything. This is because there is no respect for individuality and personal, private property. Okay? Individual property. Okay? And this is the attitude that is being taken by more and more. This is the cultural inculcation that is being taken into the mindset of most Europeans. This is why they act like they are above someone else's time and effort, that you have to tailor to their needs and whims. Okay? I cannot tell you I won't even go through them, but every single solitary data point that I requested in the ARC drive has been fought tooth and nail toward me by Europeans and Canadians. Canadians to a little bit lesser degree than Europeans, but not drastically. And again, they've both gotten better because, folks, let me tell you something. I have, since going through visually what to do for the ARC drive and going through the instructions and telling people how I do this myself, okay, and what how I am offering this and why I ask these things, because of respect for trying to protect other people's property, okay? It has gotten a lot better. They have not gone as terribly into the obnoxious, bickering back and forth with me over change this stipulation, do this for me the way I want it done, okay? And you know what? I had to get almost mean about it, right? I told you I asked nicely at first and said, please don't make requests. Never saying I'll do anything if you do. But I said, please respect my wishes, respect my time and my efforts. This is how I do it. It's a set method. It works for me. Please don't ask me to do it any other way. Nicely, right? Then repeatedly, knowing that I had asked to respect that, I would get back more and more and more and more and more requests in the face, like flaunting it in the face, throwing it right in your face. Like, oh, you've asked me not to ask you to do it this way? Here, let me throw it right in your face. I'm going to ask you anyway, like just totally disrespectfully. When I only ask nicely, please respect my time and my wishes to do this a certain way. That's all. That's how I asked at first. Well, then when it would come back over and over and over again, I would say 90% made requests to do it a different way. 90%. Okay. So at that point, after I said, don't ask me, it would drop, but still about 3/4 would ask me to do it a different way. So I had to say, if you ask, I'm going to take away the offer, right? That's how I had to get that nasty about it. I had to almost like show teeth because, and I didn't want to be like that. You got to understand how non-confrontative I am at first. When people push me though, then I don't just become confrontative. I'll get outright aggressive if I'm pushed. Okay? I just don't think people should push people like that. Don't press other people's buttons because you don't know how much they will snap. Right? I don't press other people's buttons because I don't know who they are. When I go on the street, I mind my own business and I'm armed. I am armed when I walk on the street. Okay? But I mind my own business. I don't say a word, bother anybody. Because first of all, I don't know who they are. I don't know how crazy they are. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know what kind of a mood they're in. I want to let them be. I don't owe anybody anything except non-aggression. That's it. That's what I owe anybody. And that's what everybody else owes everybody. Leave other people alone. Okay? I apologize for the noise in the background. I don't know if that's coming through, but there's a car alarm. Somebody's not shutting off. Obviously, they've, left for the day and now their car alarm has gone off and it's blaring in the neighborhood. And, unfortunately, hey, I don't have a soundproof studio. I do my show out of my home. I'm sitting in my bedroom right now, folks, because that's the shoestring budget I can do this on. Okay. It looks pretty damn good for being on that shoestring budget, but unfortunately, I don't have a soundproof studio. I wish I could afford something like that, but I can't. So we got to deal with it. Anyway, this is where Europeans are at culturally. Okay. And that's the problem. They're culturally in a position where they've been totally brought into a socialist mindset. And now, because so much has been taken from them, they feel entitled to take from other people. As if like we'll just perpetuate this cycle. Like, oh, I'm giving all this to government. They're providing for me. Well, you got to do things for me for free too. I think that's where this comes from. And again, we're well into the third hour now. I don't think we're going to have time for calls. I'm just letting people know if there are time, we'll take them. But as I said, it'll take as long as it takes. I also want to show people video downloading, okay, which I didn't get to. I'm going to do an addendum of last week's show still, if time allows for that. But anyway, I thought just providing an explanation for why helps to clarify this. I don't think these are just bad people. Right? Europeans aren't bad people. I think they should be our brothers and sisters in the fight for freedom, right? Canadians, our brothers and sisters to the north of the United States, should be in the truth and freedom movement fighting alongside Americans in the fight for truth and freedom, okay? We shouldn't be at each other's throats. I'm not bringing this up to further divide people and be at each other's throats. I like Europeans and Canadians. I want them to understand what's really going on. I want them to champion for the truth and champion for freedom. Okay? But we also have to understand our shortcomings. And they'll say many Americans are ignorant. I couldn't agree more. You go out on the street, look at what these polls I just showed you today show. I mean, look at how ill-educated my own American brothers and sisters are. I mean, could you imagine this? I'm horrified by these numbers that are shown in these polls. These are in polls that probably underestimate how bad it is. And these aren't even like news sources that would want to even tell people the truth about how bad it really is. Okay. I'm showing you those numbers and they're horrifying. The numbers are probably much worse. Okay. But the point here is I'm showing people this for improvement. I'm showing people this because some people don't even know that they should be embarrassed about their beliefs and behaviors, about their attitudes and behaviors. They don't even understand that it looks childish. It looks like you're telling someone else that their time isn't worth your time, that you're better than them in that way. It's a very entitled attitude to have. I'm not going to use the word privileged. It's entitled. There's a difference. Okay? It's saying that you deserve this when you've done nothing to achieve it or earn it. Okay? And again, there are some people who request the Ark that have done a lot of their own work, but they're few and far between, folks. I mean, if I really had to gauge how many people request the Ark drive, out of that number, percentage-wise, how many people really have their own thing going and are doing it well, it's less than 1%. I'd say maybe about 1%. Okay? So, and I get it. The people who are requesting this are in the infant stages of this growth and learning experience. So that's why they want the knowledge. And that's great. I don't want to discourage people by talking about this to get the Ark, right? So the whole point here also is it's gotten better since I talked about it publicly. I said I was going to talk about it publicly, and it was still getting bad at that point. Then when I finally brought it up and told people why their behavior was rude and even ignorant, it got better. I got to say, congratulations, the people who are sending these from overseas, wherever it has to be, Europe and other overseas countries. You guys have been doing a fantastic job since podcast number 199 about the Ark drive. Like, fantastic. Nobody's Ark's been damaged. You've been packing it great so that it doesn't get damaged. And you've been having some basic respect for the offer, which I very much commend you for and appreciate. And that's what this is about. It's about improvement. It's about getting better yesterday than you were, getting better tomorrow than you were the day before. That's all. Nothing else. And that's all I asked. That's all I could ask anybody for. Okay? That's what I've been asking from day one with this show. Do your research. Look into things deeply. Come to your own conclusions, but do it through logic, reason, and intuition. Right? People don't understand that. That has to come together. People will say, oh, that's a contradiction. No, it isn't. Not a bit. You have to have good intuition to even know where to go and what books to read and what videos to watch. You got to use both. Then you have to even use it to say, is this worth pursuing more and downloading more regarding this? Is it going to help? Ask the big question, what's going to help the most? What is going to do the most? What is going to be the best way to help? What is going to help the most in the world? Okay? So that being said, I want to just wrap this up with talking about ultimately all this is about the difference between collectivism versus individualism. Okay? When we get into talking about political ideologies, okay, versus real freedom, okay, we're talking about people who believe in the collective versus who respect the rights of the individual. The collective is a group construct. It's a constructural idea. It doesn't really exist in nature. Individuals exist in nature. Okay? So this whole thing of the collective, it has this mindset, okay, that is all constructural. Again, this is the nature of my work. The underlying basis of all my work, ladies and gentlemen, is what is the difference between the natural and the artificial? The real versus the illusory and the constructural. Well, this is it. This is what it all comes down to. The individual is real. The individual owns property. The individual has rights. The collective is a construct that can be used by the state to prey on somebody's, desire for better a state of being in the world, more equality under rights, etc. But it's preying on that. It's preying on that, altruism that is in most people, okay? And thinking that you can legislate that or you can get that done through coercing, through collective means, which is what government is. So here you have the black sheep that represents the individual saying, I just think that all human interactions should be voluntary. That's it. Very simple. That's the non-aggression principle. All human interactions should be based on voluntary, consent. That's it. Everything should be consensual. Once you break consent, you have something called coercion, which is violence. I believe that all relationships should be consensual. Okay? Voluntary. And then you have the herd with their herd think, their collectivist herd think mentality coming in. That's utopian, hippie. But who would build the roads? Freedom isn't free. Move to Somalia. Government is a necessary evil. And on and on and on and on. We need democratic socialism. Let's throw that in there. You know? It's the same collectivist nonsense think that leads to all kinds of injustices, destruction of freedom, and ultimately slavery, chaos, and death. Okay? This is what eventually results from collectivism. Every single time. And if you don't think so, all you have to do is pick up a history book and read it, which far too few will do. You know, I've been asking people to read None Dare Call Conspiracy for the better part of 10 years now. And like a handful of people have done it, you know, and people will still call themselves advocates of the truth and freedom movement when they haven't read practically the Bible on the subject, you know. Ultimately, this is what it's ultimately all about, folks. This is where collectivism versus individualism goes. We move more down the road of collectivism. We're moving down the road of totalitarianism and slavery. We respect the rights of individuals, and we get out of this socialist and entitled mindset and understand principles and rights and natural law. We are moving toward a world that is based in real freedom under natural law, the laws of morality that ultimately govern the consequences for the behavioral choices of human beings and beings that are even beyond human beings. But natural law isn't about animal kingdom. See, and people talking about objective morality versus subjective morality and can't understand the concept that the laws of morality don't apply to animals. The animals in the field living on the earth do not have the brain capacity and understanding and development in the brain and central nervous system to understand the difference between right and wrong, to be held to account according to the laws of behavioral consequence. You have to have a brain that is capable of understanding the laws of behavioral consequence and the difference between right behavior and wrong behavior. Animals don't have that. You cannot put them in the same category as human beings and engage them on the same behavioral standards. Are you nuts? Are you completely nuts? That is like saying, well, we're going to give an award here for who has, built the best model of the solar system. And, we're going to gauge, Charlie here in the third grade versus Charlie's dog. Well, Charlie's dog can't do an operation like that. So, we're going to gauge that according to the same standard. It's not the same capabilities. This is why people have to understand natural law, which is the laws of consequence, have nothing to do with animals. It has nothing to do with Darwinism or Darwinian theory at all. Okay, look, I think next week's show, or maybe in a couple weeks, not sure if I might have a guest next week. I might do a show on this. If I don't have a guest, okay, I might do a show called What Natural Law Is Not. Okay? So I've never done that. I've never actually done an entirety of a show on all of the things that people who have zero understanding of what I'm talking about when I utter the phrase natural law think in their own mind, their own mental definition that it means. And then they babble on and ramble on and they spew out all that nonsense, that verbal diarrhea about what they think natural law means that has absolutely zero to do with what natural law really is. So I think maybe I'll take this as a segue, okay? And maybe next week the topic for the show will be what natural law is not, okay? So we can clarify that once and for all time here formally on the show of what I do not mean when I talk about natural law and what you can never use as an example to represent the laws of morality or even objective morality at all when it comes to human standards for morality. Animals can't have standards for morality because they're animals. They don't have the capacity for understanding morality. And yet you still have imbeciles debating this. Okay? So, I'll end on this next slide, which really sums up the entirety of the thing. Don't be one of the sheep racing toward the edge of the cliff with your attitude about socialism and your attitude about entitlement. Okay? Be the dog who's saying, the black sheep, I'm sorry, who's saying, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, and going the opposite direction against all the herd of groupthink and collectivist mentality that thinks they know what they're doing but is racing over the edge of a cliff to their deaths. Be the black sheep who is the individual who understands individual property, individual rights, and natural law as the mechanisms that will ultimately lead to true freedom and true voluntary human interaction, which should be the only form of human interaction. Okay? So, you could be harsh about it. You could be polite about it and say, excuse me, but I'm heading this way. You could head that way. Okay? But in one form or another, be the individual and don't go with the collective mindset, because the collective mindset always leads over a cliff. All right. So with that, my formal slideshow aspect is finished. I'm going to just go back to it briefly because I'm going to ask people, if you find donation in the work that I've done here on What on Earth is Happening, please visit What on Earth is Happening donation gifts. That's gifts.whatonearthishappening.com. Best way of visiting it is just hitting the gifts tab or button on the website. This way you could just read the caveat and then click into the green button if you're okay. If you have a Bitcoin account or a PayPal account, that's the methods that I take for donations here. Also, if you want to if you want to get the ARC drive, which I've talked about on this episode a whole lot, okay, because this was the impetus, this was the influencing factor for making the content of this episode. So if you want to get the ARC drive, go to whatonearthishappening/ARC or just click the ARC drive tab or ARC button, okay, and you can read about what the ARC is, what's basically on it, and what's required. You could fill out the form to get the shipping instructions to receive the ARC drive. And please, follow them. People have been following them very well, and their property has been in great shape. It's been making the full round trip back to them, and they've been enjoying the contents of the ARC and becoming enlightened as a result. And if you want to make a straight donation to the cause of What on Earth is Happening, go to whatonearthishappening.com/donate. There are 10 different methods for donation now, including PayPal, Patreon, Amazon wish list to donate directly with tech needs, and several cryptocurrencies, or you could do it the old-fashioned way with a good old-fashioned check or money order. So check out the donate tab or button on What on Earth is Happening if you want to make a donation. Thank you to everyone who has contributed. We couldn't do this without you, and What on Earth is Happening is run solely on your donations through the gifts, donation gifts, and through straight donations. Without your support, I wouldn't be able to continue to do this, so thank you. So with that being said, I want to give an addendum to last week's show, because a few people wrote to me and basically said that it was a pretty big oversight on my part, and I agree with them that it was a large oversight, that I didn't cover how to do something that everybody should know how to do, and that's download YouTube videos. So I'm going to do that here today in the last half hour of the show, and if there's time for calls, we'll take a couple before the end, but let's see how this goes. Okay, so let's switch over to my laptop. I'm going to go to YouTube, okay? And I'm going to type in individualism versus collectivism. Individualism versus collectivism. Okay. And let's see what videos come up. Collectivism and individualism. Okay, here we go. Okay, I think this is a perfect one. So here's G. Edward Griffin on collectivism versus individualism. Okay, let me just click this. It is a lecture, it looks like. It's an hour and 17 minutes long. Let's just look through it.
Why we have these problems in the world. We're not going to.
All right. This looks like a perfect example to download. Okay, now I am using Firefox. Okay, now different people will have different takes and preferences for browsers. I'm a fan of free and open source software. That's why I use Firefox. I try to use open source software wherever possible. I am using a Mac, which is the antithesis of that. Apple is the antithesis of that, I should say, not really the Mac per se, but Apple is certainly the antithesis of that in the modern world. I use it because I am sort of tied to the platform by a lot of media that I've made and programs that I've built with it. So I do prefer it as a creative platform. I hate the company. But that's neither here nor there. I'm using Firefox, and it is open source software. I think it's a good choice for a browser, number one, because I think the rendering engine, the quantum rendering engine in the new Firefox is probably better than most other rendering engines. I don't really prefer the WebKit engine that's in Safari or Chrome's rendering engine personally. So I like the speed of Firefox. I like the layout engine, and I like the plugin architecture, the add-on architecture, which is what I'm going to show you right now. So YouTube doesn't make any of their videos downloadable for, copyright reasons or censorship reasons, okay? So this will show you a way to preserve things that are potentially going to be censored on YouTube by just downloading them to your computer, and then you could distribute them by other means, like on a hard drive, a thumb drive, on other areas of the internet, through BitTorrent, through other YouTube channels, Vimeo, whatever, okay? So it's a way to do an end run around censorship of any kind on the web, okay? So let's look at, I'm going to do it through an add-on to Firefox. Now, there are other means of doing this, which I'll get to, but this is a universal means through a universal browser. What that means is you could do this on any platform, okay? So I'm trying to keep the methodology of doing this as platform agnostic as possible, okay? So you could do this on Linux, you could do this on Windows, you could do this on a Mac with Firefox and the add-on I'm about to show you, okay? So I'm going to click the menu button on the Firefox interface that's on the far right underneath the title bar, okay? So that's this little... See this little hamburger 3-line menu icon that's iconic for menu, okay? I'm clicking that. Now in there, I'm going to click on add-ons, okay? So I click add-ons, that makes a new tab, and it shows me the extensions that I have in my browser. So I'm using 1Password, which lets me keep my passwords in an encrypted database. I'm using Downy, which is a program I'm going to show you if you're a Mac user in a few moments. I use something called Fenetra that I could open video windows outside the browser in. I use a pop-up blocker called Pop-up Blocker Ultimate. I use an ad blocker called uBlock Origin. And there was an Acrobat plugin. I have that disabled. Okay, so anyway, these are some extensions that don't come with the browser that I've added. Now I'm going to show you one called Video Download Helper. Okay, so I'm going to type into here where it says find more extensions in Firefox, okay? Video Download Helper. So download helper is all one word, download helper. Just like that, okay? And now that's going to, and folks, we're doing this in real time, okay? So, if there's a technical glitch, it's what it is. This is a live demo, okay? Just that as a caveat there. All right, so Video Download Helper, you'll see it is the most popular with over 3 million users. So the people who do YouTube or any other video downloading, this will not just work on YouTube. This will work on any page that embeds a video. So if there's an embedded video, you can grab the embedded video with this plugin, with this add-on for Firefox. So about 3 million people have this plugin because the people who are doing this know that it works. Okay, so I'm going to click there onto the add-on, and it says Video Download Helper, the easy way to download and convert web videos from hundreds of YouTube-like websites. Add to Firefox. I'm going to click this button here that says Add to Firefox. Okay, Firefox is going to ask me, do you want to add Video Downloader? It requires these permissions. I'm going to say yes, I want to add it. Okay, congratulations, you've just installed Video Download Helper. Okay, I'm going to hit OK right here. Now, there is one more thing you will have to do before you start downloading video. You'll have to go to the settings and you will have to install the companion app. The companion app makes it possible for your operating system to actually download the video to your file system. So you have the browser plugin, but now you need the application, which basically takes it from your browser and saves it into your operating system. Okay, so I'm going to click here again. I'm going to go back to add-ons. Click the menu, go back to add-ons. Now Video Download Helper is in my installed extensions, and I'm going to hit preferences right here. This is the preferences window, and you can customize it however you like. I'm not going to go into all the ways it can be customized. I'm just going to show you it says companion app not installed right here. This is what we have to get installed. Okay, so I'm going to click this disclosure cross right there, and it says you have to install the companion app. Okay, so I'm going to click install companion app. That's going to take me to another tab in my web browser. And I know this is going to look complicated, but you only have to do this once, okay? So then for the Mac, this will show you for Linux, for Windows, whatever system you're on, it'll show you a way that you could download and install this, okay? So I'm just going to use the recommended installation method, and I'm going to hit, it's a package installation. I'm going to hit download. All a package is just, it's a piece of software. It's like an installer. You just double click it and you install it. So it says you've chosen to open. This is the name of the package, Net Download Helper, co-app. Okay. I'm going to hit save file. So I hit save file. You just saw my folder down there jump. That's my downloads folder. Okay. I'm going to go to my downloads folder and open it. Okay. So this takes me to my Finder interface, and I'm going to just double click on the file I just downloaded, which is Net Download Helper Co-app. This is the package, okay, for the companion app. Okay, I'm going to double click that, and it gives me an installer. I'm going to hit continue and then install. All right. I'm going to just allow it to install, and I'm going to hit close. And you could either keep the package or move it to the trash. I'll move it to the trash. I don't need that anymore. Okay, now I'm going to go back to Firefox, and I'm going to close this tab, and I'm going to right here hit recheck for the companion app. So it says verifying companion app installed. We found the companion app in your applications folder. You're set now to download from any site that you can browse to that has a video embedded on it. Okay, so I'm going to close these other tabs. Okay, and so that wasn't too bad. You know, some people would consider that technical. It was it was a download of a browser add-on and a download of a little small companion application that goes into your applications folder. That's it. That's all. So, yeah, an extension to a browser and a small program. Okay. Now we can download this video. Okay. So I'm going to refresh the page, and I have to allow access through my firewall, which I will. Okay. I'm going to pause the video here. Okay. Now I'm going to go to this button right here. You'll see that it put a new little button on the interface next to that menu. Okay, so if I click that, it will show me a couple of variations of the video that are available for download. So there's a 720p version and a 1080p version. So I'm going to download the 1080 version, which is the full HD version. Okay, so all I have to do is click here and hit download, or I could just hit quick download. Now it's downloading. So if I click in here and I hit running, it will show me that the video has started to download. And again, it's a long video. You know, it's an hour and 17 minutes, and it's full HD. So it's going to take a while to download, but you'll see it's already gotten 1%. Okay. And it will put it in a folder inside your home folder called DW Helper. Okay, nothing's in there yet because it's not done downloading, but it'll make a folder in your home folder, and it will call it DW Helper, which is the download helper. And when it's finished downloading, you will then have the full video in your DW Helper folder inside your home folder. You can go in there, you can move it wherever you want. You could double click it to watch it right there. That is how to download just about any video that you find on any web page that you can navigate to. Okay. So I'm going to show you one other method for doing this. Okay. Now this is my preferred method, but this will only work on a Mac. Okay. Now there are other apps that are equivalent to this. So again, last week when I showed you that there are methods for downloading things with BitTorrent, okay? The idea was don't memorize the steps, right? The steps are just the method that we used in this particular instance on this platform using this app, right? If you're on a different platform, it might have different steps. If you're using a different app, it might work a different way, right? So, for example, I was talking to a friend about IRC, okay? And a former friend showed me how to use direct client-to-client search engines. They call them DCC search engines, right? So I went on one and, I was going to download a file that I wanted to watch, a documentary, and this server had it on IRC. And, I started downloading it, and my client program for IRC was very buggy. It hadn't been... I used to use an IRC program called Lincolnus, okay, for the Mac, which I liked. I thought it was a good one. There's a lot of old clunky ones, old pure text interfaces. This one had a nice windowed interface. It had like a direct client-to-client transfer feature. It worked really well when it was in its heyday. I just checked, I haven't been on IRC a lot, and I haven't run Lincolnus in a while. The last time this app was developed on the Mac was back in 2012. The developer has it's abandonware. That's what they call it when the developer stops making improvements and just lets the software just go. So this program was abandonware, right? And I think you'll benefit from this anecdote, okay? Because it helps demonstrate the adaptability that you have to have when it comes to doing things. When you stay rooted in your ways and just tightly, I'm going to do it just this way, this way, this way, okay? And memorize steps and not just go along with the flow of something, of how a general idea works, right? You're going to find you're going to be lost in computing, okay? This is about correlative thinking, correlational thinking, right? This is what we've talked about this endlessly when we talk about the occult, okay? The occult contains tons of examples of correlative or correlational thinking. The same applies with the technological world. Okay? So I found Lincolnus to be super crashy when using it again in the real world on a modern operating system. It hadn't been developed, I guess, since, Mac OS 10.11 or 12 years ago, right? I'm using 10.14 now, right? So I said, well, let me see if there's another better IRC client. So I downloaded something called Textual, right? And I've never seen that program before in my life. Never saw it. Downloaded it for the first time, open it up, right? There's a few things in different places, but in general, I recognize where to go to do things immediately because it's a general idea. How does one use an IRC client? Right? A general idea. How does one use a BitTorrent client? A general idea. How does one use an internet video downloader? They're going to have general principles that they're built on, right? That's the principle. That's what you have to understand, right? If you try to just memorize, details of where this is at, and menus and tasks, they're not going to be there in something that's built differently. So you have to adapt and say, I'm not looking for exact memorizational tasks. This isn't a trained monkey thing where, do this, then this, then this, that. No, it's about the conceptual idea of what does this program do? What is the purpose for it? Where might these items live? If the person has a general idea of interface development, okay? And then you're going to adapt or correlational. You're going to correlate in your mind where functions might be in that other app, Okay, so I opened up Textual and I was almost immediately able to start using a program that I've never seen before in my life because I got the general concept instead of memorizing tasks. This is what good practices in computing are, okay? And in teaching technology, which is going to be a big part of what on earth is happening going forward, because I'm telling you folks, I meet technologically illiterate people, and it's unacceptable. This is the equivalent of not knowing how to read and write in today's world, okay? It's not acceptable, okay? Because if you're going to actually try to communicate and effectively teach other people, you have to know how to do this stuff. This isn't optional. It's required. So, get the concept. Don't memorize tasks, okay? So, I'm going to show you a video downloader that is custom built for the Mac, meaning it's a native Mac OS application. You might go and type in to a search engine, for example. The program I'm going to show you briefly is Downy, okay? So Downy is built for the Mac. There's no Windows version. There's no Linux version. However, you might be able to type into a search engine of your choice, what is a equivalent of Downy for Windows, of the Downy video downloader application on the Macintosh for Windows or for Linux. So, when I'm on Windows or Linux, I'll just use Video Download Helper. I know it. I'm used to it, so I use it, and it works, okay? But you might want a native app on Windows or Linux. So find something that does the same thing. Look on software comparison websites, type in alternative to, and then type in Downy for Macintosh, right? And you'll find an alternative. They exist. And learn about the software, buy it, if you have to, and start using it, okay? So let me show you Downy and how easy this one is. So this is the interface for Downy, okay? And it's a blank window that's just hovering. I'm going to even make it smaller, so I have it kind of stretched out there. It's just a tiny little window when it opens, right? And you can do a couple things here, okay? You can copy and paste the URL from your web browser that has the video on it to the Downy window, okay? You can drag and drop the URL onto the Downy window, or you could do what I did, and I installed the Downy add-on, okay? So all I did here was I went to add-ons, same way I did the video downloader, and you'll see it's already in here. So I'm not going to re-download it. I'm just showing you I've already done this process. And I'm going to just type Downy here. And again, this is Mac only. Okay. So this is the Downy extension. There's not nearly as many users. You saw, what was there? Let me go back there. There was 3,198 users compared to 3 million users for video downloaders. So this is absolutely not as popular of an option. Okay. Yet for me, I feel it's the best. It works natively and it works very efficiently, even easier than what I just showed you. Okay, so it's already installed in my system, so it says remove there, not install. I'm not going to remove it because I use it. Okay, so I'm going to use it to download this Geo Griffin video on YouTube. So I could start with it open or I could start with it quit. It won't matter. Okay, I'll quit it. So I start with the program completely quit out of. Okay, I'm just going to click this button, which is the Downy button. It says open with Downy. Okay, so all I do is click that. Downy opens, it finds the video, and it starts downloading. Now Downy, you'll notice, is incredibly faster because it uses multi-threaded downloading technology, which means it's initiating many downloads simultaneously for the same video and combining them. That video is done downloading already, folks. The other one, let's see where this one's at. The other one's still at 28%. Okay? Now you understand why I use Downy instead of Video Download Helper on the Mac. Okay? Not knocking the other one. It's a good open source alternative. But look, here's another thing, folks. not to belabor this point, I talked about it a little bit. There's a reason proprietary software, people are willing to pay for it. Did you see the difference? I know I did. Okay. I want the free and open source community to succeed, man. When I mean I want, I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, I want to support it. I do support it. I don't want to support it. I do support it. I want it to improve. Okay? The free and open source community cannot just make their selling point that it's free and open source. Your software must be good. It must work well. Okay? So let me tell you something. If you give me the choice between that free and open source program that I can modify to my heart's content, but it's going to download like that, versus a proprietary program that I don't have the code to, that I had to pay a developer for, but it's going to work like Downey just did, I'm taking Downey 100% of the time, every time. And that's what most of average people that are using a computer to get things done are going to do. So this is what the free and open source software world has to learn. Okay? They got to learn that. It's a hard lesson to learn. They don't want to hear it, but they have to learn it. And believe me, I'm one of your champions. If people build free open source software, I'll highlight it on this show if it does the job better than anything else. Okay? But I just showed you the program for me that does the job better than anything else. For me. Okay, you can choose what you want. But, I'm going to just click this window and I'll click right here, this little magnifying glass. That'll take me to the Finder where the video is at. And I'll just show you it is the full video and I can play it in its entirety in HD. If we switch to the, can we switch back to the computer? Hold on. Okay, we're good. I thought we were having a tech glitch there. No worries. Here we go. So I'll just show you. This is the full video in HD. And, we can...
At ease.
Let me just pause it. I'm just going to show you. I could scrub all the way through it from beginning to end. There's part of the middle.
Accident, you could be injured. You might even get killed.
I'll go all the way toward the end, and it is the full presentation that G.O. Griffin gave on individualism versus collectivism, all 1 hour and 17 minutes worth. So that is how to download a video from YouTube to prevent it from being censored, folks. Okay? I'm finished. I'm quitting the program there. Close out of my browser. So we're running out of time. So I think I will... Let's see. Do we have time for one call going out? Let's see. Let's do one call. We have about 2 minutes left in the show. I hope everybody enjoyed that little addendum. Who do we have waiting here? Let's go to... Let me unmute myself. I'm unmuted there. All right. Let's go to... Let's go to Dutch Patriot. Dutch Patriot, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome. I should be being heard in the room. You have to unmute yourself. This is what we have to put an addendum in here. Let's go to Essence of Anarchony. You're live on What on Earth is Happening.
Hey, Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear. Welcome to the show.
All
we have
right,
very
great.
limited time, so go.
Couple things then. It's funny that we're talking here on such harmony on something that's, with the green language. And I think the data caps are probably more about stifling information flow than, trying to make... You look around, you got digital farming, you look at farm satellite, just looks like a low-resolution image on the... And I remember hearing that you're a fan of the... And I'd say they'd probably call you Mark the Shadow, because you are diamond cutting people through their shadow selves.
I appreciate that. Your audio's cutting in and out a little bit, so I'm going to let you go. But I got the essence of what you were saying. We do have to press on with trying to cut through that darkness, and part of that is showing people how to get information on their own, and also to distribute it on their own. We have to be not only people who download that information and take it into ourselves, but who also propagate it and publish it out to others. So let's go to Electric Boogie. You're live on What on Earth is Happening. Welcome. No, let's go to True Rebel. True Rebel, you're live on What on Earth is Happening. 30 seconds. Not there. I think that's all the time we're going to have for this edition. I tried to squeeze a couple of calls in toward the end. That's all the time we have for this edition of What on Earth is Happening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed the show. We're live here every Sunday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. East Coast time. Remember, everyone, government is slavery. We'll see you right here next week.